enough, while the Refugee Council warned they'd only push more desperate people into the arms of smugglers.
We're bringing forward new immigration rules this week to temporarily suspend new applications under the existing dedicated refugee family reunion route.
And that comes as the Prime Minister is bringing forward Labour's 2029 deadline to end the use of asylum hotels, only 3 months after making that pledge. And earlier today, Shadow Energy Minister Andrew Bowie spoke to us here on GB News.
I hope it works, but the fact of the matter is that they're papering over the cracks of a situation that they have completely failed to get to grips with. You know, they came into power last year with a single slogan, smash the gangs. And they thought by smashing the gangs, they'd prevent illegal crossings. They haven't smashed the gangs. They haven't prevented illegal crossings. The only thing they've smashed is the record for the number of people crossing the English Channel. So I hope that this action that the Home Secretary is taking works. Of course, we all want to see the illegal crossings come down. And the number of people coming into the country get under control. But so far I've seen little to no evidence that Labour really have a concrete plan for doing so.
In other news, London Assembly member Zach Polanski has been elected leader of the Green Party of England and Wales by a landslide. Polanski beat joint candidates, the Green MPs Adrian Ramsey and Ellie Chowns, by 20,411 votes to 3,705. Polanski promising in his victory speech to work every single day to grow this party and paying tribute to his defeated rivals. In a message to Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party, he said the Greens were, quote, going to replace you. The government is changing the law to stop the Sentencing Council issuing new guidelines to courts in England and Wales without the explicit approval of the Justice Secretary. Under the new rules, Shabana Mahmood will have the veto powers over any new sentencing guidance issued by the independent public body. The change comes after a public dispute earlier in the year between the Sentencing Council and the government over pre-sentence reports for offenders from certain minority groups. The new measure will be brought in as part of the sentencing bill being introduced in the House of Commons today. Kemi Badenoch says her party will remove all net zero requirements on oil and gas companies drilling in the North Sea if elected. The Tory leader has spoken ahead of a speech to offshore executives in Aberdeen.
It will help people with their energy bills by making sure that we increase supply. 100% of the gas that is taken from the North Sea is used in the UK. And what we're seeing right now with sky-high energy bills is a result of a net zero mandate that is simply not working. And we need both Labour and the SNP to change course. It does matter because we help influence the market. And you look at countries like Norway who are drilling right in this very basin in the North Sea. We need to make sure that we're also able to provide supply. At the moment, European countries are still buying oil and gas from Russia. I think it would be a lot better if they bought it from Aberdeen.
Kemi Badenoch there speaking earlier. And finally, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have kicked off bilateral talks in Beijing today on the eve of a massive military parade in the Chinese capital. Putin hailed relations between the two countries, saying they were an unprecedented level. Xi told Putin that China-Russia relations have withstood the test of international changes, adding that Beijing was willing to work with Moscow to, quote, promote the construction of a more just and reasonable global governance system. Well, that comes as Xi is set to host China's largest ever military parade tomorrow, which will mark the 80th anniversary of the surrender of Japanese in China at the end of World War II. Those are the latest headlines for now. Martin up next, but first let's take a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here are those markets. Just after 3 o'clock, the pound will buy you $1.3371 and €1.1496. The price of gold, £2,603.95 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,152 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. And all together now, let's start the show by wishing the Prime Minister a very happy birthday. Sir Keir Starmer marks turning 63 years old today by hitting a record low approval rating. And let's see how he got there.
And let me be clear, but I want to be crystal clear. And I've been absolutely clear. But I'm very clear in my own mind. I've been absolutely clear. I'm always clear.
The Mayor of London, but the nasty person. I think
he's a friend of mine.
No, I think he's done a terrible job.
We must bring the cost of asylum down, and we have a manifesto pledge to bring the number of hotels down. Their bills will go down, and they will go down not just for a short time, but for the long term. No, I won't shy away from calling it what it is. Far-right thuggery. Calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right. My message to people smugglers is this. We're breaking your business model. My dad was a tool maker. We're getting on with it, and I'm very pleased to be delivering from a position of power rather than going around the division lobbies losing every night. I've had too much of that.
Happy birthday, Sir Keir. Now, the Prime Minister's low approval rating and the rise in support for Reform UK Party and the leader Nigel Farage has forced Sir Keir Starmer to reshuffle his top team ahead of the critical autumn budget. Now, many have seen the appointment of former Treasury Minister Darren Jones as the PM's Chief Secretary as a move to undermine Chancellor Rachel Reeves and place the economy strategy at the heart of Number 10. Well, lots to tuck into on Sir Keir Starmer's birthday. And I'm joined in the studio by our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, welcome to the studio. Let's look at this eye-watering poll. Not many happy returns in this for Sir Keir Starmer. It was done for City AM, the newspaper. And let's start with the bad news for Sir Keir. Record low popularity level of minus 41 points. That's right on the floor.
It is right on the floor, and I think it's just worth reiterating. This is truly extraordinary for a Prime Minister who came into power just over 1 year ago and came into power with a really, really big majority. It's just 3 seats fewer than Tony Blair achieved in that 1997 landslide. I was on the election campaign trail during that election, and it was really interesting. Everyone said that Keir Starmer's popularity was miles wide and inches deep. People were fed up with the Conservatives. They wanted a change, but there wasn't a huge amount of enthusiasm for Keir Starmer himself, and that's really played out. We have seen that come to its likely conclusion, really. Keir Starmer's popularity ratings are on the floor now, and that means that his own MPs don't have very much faith in him. They don't feel very much loyalty towards him. When Blair won in 1997, backbench MPs felt that they owed Blair their seats. Backbench MPs do not feel that now, and that's why we saw that huge rebellion on the welfare bill. That's why we saw the rebellion on the winter fuel cuts, and is essentially why Keir Starmer has a big majority but can't actually really do anything with it. Which leads us on to the problem that he has with the economy. Now, he's done this huge shake-up of his top team. Everyone said over the weekend that there wasn't going to be a reshuffle. There really has been a reshuffle. And the main thing that's happened is he has taken Rachel Reeves's number 2, Darren Jones, in number 11. He's essentially been promoted to above Reeves herself. He is now the economic secretary to the Prime Minister. That is a signal that Keir Starmer wants to shake up his economic plans. Why? Because people are deeply, deeply worried about the state of the UK economy. Taxes have gone up. Most importantly, that national insurance hike for employers that Rachel Reeves imposed at the last budget. Now, the effect of that has been a deadening of the jobs market. People do not want to hire, essentially, because it's just too expensive for them to have workers. And overall, that has led to a collapse in the bond market. We are seeing the economy at almost 100% GDP to debt ratio. That is deeply, deeply alarming and not a situation that a Prime Minister wants to be in. Bad for Starmer now. It looks like it's going to get worse.
And the number one concern of the British public in this City AM poll is tax rises. 78% of the British electorate are concerned, scared is the word they use, about the damage that tax rises could cause to the UK economy. Of course, Rachel Reeves, totally on the ropes at the moment, frozen out of proceedings, it seems. Gone by Christmas was the line yesterday. But let's just delve back into some of these other numbers for political leaders. Sir Keir Starmer on the floor at minus 41. Jeremy Corbyn, minus 27. Astonishingly, Jeremy Corbyn more popular with the British electorate by 14 points than the Prime Minister. That's an incredible fate. Kemi Badenoch on -17, down 2 points. Zara Sultana, the sidekick at the Your Party, on -7. Nigel Farage doing comparatively well on -6, with, of course, 0 being the sweet spot, or ideally there'll be some kind of approval. But you were also at a political launch earlier on today. The Green Party have got a new leader. The Green Party could be wiped out, of course, if Corbyn's outfit gets off the ground. But tell us about this oddball, is that the right word? Or curveball, perhaps, is more flattering. Zach Polansky, what do we know about him?
Yes, so Zach Polansky won the Green Party leadership election by a huge landslide, 20,000 votes to 3,000 for his opponents. Now, he is one of the most left-wing party leaders I have ever heard speak. I mean, I think it's fair to say that his views are sort of socialism bordering on communism. He couldn't really articulate any difference between himself and Jeremy Corbyn's party. But at the moment, the Greens are seeing a pretty big, surge in support. They won 4 seats at the general election. They have as many MPs as Reform, and Zach Polansky hopes to massively increase that number. He calls himself an eco-populist, which I think is quite interesting in itself. Left-wing politicians normally shy away from the populism label, not so Zach Polansky. He even went as far as to say today at this press conference that the Greens have something to learn from Nigel Farage. He said he despised Nigel Farage's politics, but you've got to give it to Reform. They can tell a story. So the Greens want to pitch themselves as a sort of antidote to Reform, the mirror image of Reform. And that's how Polansky seems to be positioning himself.
And I believe he has a colourful pastor. Former hypnotist, I believe.
He's a former hypnotist, and he once said that women could increase their breast size through the power of their brains. It'd be interesting to see how he sort of goes down with the public. I think on the whole, I mean, he comes across as sort of slightly eccentric. He was a pretty good speaker, actually. I was relatively impressed with his oratory at the press conference today, and I'm not sure if the Brits mind a bit of kind of eccentricity in a background. It'll be fascinating. I mean, whether he can pitch himself as that opposite, equal and opposite number to Farage, I'm not sure. But he said to his followers today at this Green Party press conference, Nigel Farage, I didn't know this stat, has more followers on TikTok than all other MPs put together. Well, that's something that Polansky is trying to emulate. Let's see how he goes.
Zach Polansky, would he be a storm in a teacup, or dare I say, I'm going to say a storm in a sea cup? Terrible joke, and I must apologise for that, but what a colourful pass. Olivia Utley, thank you very, very much. Let's bring in my next guest now and speak with the political commentator, Susie Stride. Susie, always a pleasure to have your company. Happy birthday to Keir Starmer, said hardly anybody from the electorate. What terrible birthday viewing figures this is. -41%, 14% less popular than Jeremy Corbyn. The bloke can't do anything right.
Listen, I'm never going to make the comparison between Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer. I think the British public are very, very grateful to not have Jeremy Corbyn making any decisions over this nation. And so, I won't make that comparison. However, look, there's no point on pretending here. It's been a very difficult first year for this Labour government, and there has been progress and there has been positive steps, but ultimately, it's been an incredibly difficult climate. Negotiating trade deals with Donald Trump, the war in Ukraine, everything that's been going on in the Middle East. I mean, it's been a very difficult first year. Now, I'm not making excuses for, where people are at or whatnot, but I think it's important to say no economy can be turned around in a year. You can't, turn round. And I know you're going to hate me saying this, 14 years of the Tories, you can't turn that around in 12 months. It's going to take time.
Susie, I was waiting for that because I knew it was coming, because let's be honest, it's trotted out at every speech by the Prime Minister himself, by every government minister. It's the Tories' fault. 14 years of misery. I wonder how long that's going to wash. But seriously, looking to the future, this City AM poll today, 78% of the British public terrified of tax rises, and they're inevitable because the economy is on the floor, and the Labour Party have given away billions and billions of pounds to unions, to public sector workers, to the Chagos, to Mauritius via the Chagos Islands, to Ukraine, to foreign carbon capture. Endless billions of giveaways, including billions on asylum seekers on universal credit. And there's been a backbench rebellion that prevented any form of cost saving. As sure as night follows day, the taxpayer are going to have to pick up this mess. Susie Stride, they're not going to like it.
No, look, I think there are some difficult decisions there that had to be made. And I think, look, I don't believe in pushing blame where blame doesn't need to be pushed. And I also really hate repeating certain lines. However, just completely rationally, you know, it wasn't that long ago we had Liz Truss and her disastrous mini budget. You know, people's mortgages have still not recovered from that. And I'm sorry, you know, I'm not trying to put blame there for everything, but those are people who are still suffering and struggling, and their cost of living is struggling. And it's not to do with Labour, it's to do with the decisions that she made and that Kwasi Kwarteng made. However, we now obviously have to take responsibility. We say we, I'm not actually in government, but Labour do have to take responsibility. They've been in for a year, but it's really important. You cannot turn around these things within 12 months. And I do believe that the best days of this nation are coming. And I do believe that things are going to begin to turn around. And it's absolutely right. You also bring up about immigration and the costs of that. And this is why it's very, very important, some of the announcements that Yvette Cooper's been making.
Susie, you mentioned 14 years of Tory rule. You mentioned Liz Truss. You mentioned the mini budget. You mentioned Ukraine. I need the full bingo ticket. You haven't mentioned Brexit.
Well, look, I wasn't a Brexiteer. I didn't vote for it. I campaigned against it. You know, I could probably bring on 100 business leaders that would say Brexit has not done good for our economy. But the fact of the matter is we are where we are. We have to, like, no point crying over spilt milk. This is where we are. And what we need to do is rebuild the economy. And what we need to do, you know, is see, Britain thriving again. I think it's important to say that we do have the fastest growing economy in the G7. I think it's important to say that Keir Starmer negotiated one of the best trade deals with Donald Trump. And I actually thought that's the thing you were going to say. I hadn't mentioned Donald Trump, you know, because, again, you know, all of that has been.
But that was a Brexit bonus. That was a Brexit bonus. We'd have been clobbered with even higher tariffs if we'd been in the European Union. So actually, Brexit was the one card that Keir Starmer has been dealt that's helped him out, despite the fact he spent 3 years trying to cancel it. Susie Stride, we've got to move on.
I just want to say, I do think, you know, I think that people have been very harsh about Keir Starmer, OK? The fact is he negotiated a great deal with Donald Trump, and there are lots of positive things there. The best days of this nation are coming.
OK, well, good. Some welcome birthday cheer there for the Prime Minister from you, Susie Stride. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today on the show. Thank you. Now, degenerative native men are the biggest threat to British women. That's according to the Labour MP, Kat Eccles. Her comments come as she and other prominent left-wing women tell the right-wingers to stop linking immigration to sexual abuse. But according to a report by the Centre for Migration Control, sex crimes by foreign nationals have skyrocketed. Well, let's speak now with the Deputy Director of Women's Safety Initiative, Anna McGovern. Anna, welcome to the show. Simply astonishing open letter today by a group of women calling themselves Women Against the Far Right. This is Paloma Faith, the millionaire singer, Charlotte Church, the voice of an angel, also a millionaire, Zara Sultana, the independent MP, Diane Abbott, and Shami Chakrabarti, of course, Baroness now, but former Director of Liberty, telling people like you, you're far right, telling people like you to stop complaining about immigrants committing sex crimes. How does that make you feel?
I think it's absolutely disgraceful what they are doing. How dare they? Because this is a real thing that is happening to people across the country, and women and girls are terrified for their safety. That is why we formed the Women's Safety Initiative, to raise awareness of these issues and to give women a platform to share their own experiences as well. This is backed by data, as we know. So what recently came out, Afghans are more than 20 times more likely to be convicted of sexual offences than British citizens, and foreign nationals were 71% more likely than Britons to be convicted for sex crimes. So this is backed up by data. So simply saying that it's far right to raise awareness of these issues is rubbish, and it's completely offensive to these survivors as well. How dare they?
Yeah, Anna McGovern, let's try and bring that chart on the screen there. You mentioned that. This is the figures from the Centre for Migration Control. It shows quite clearly, as you said, 22 times more likely to commit sexual offences, top of the league of shame, Afghan nationals in the United Kingdom. That's on our screen now. And we have a bigger chart which shows there are 87 nationalities more likely to commit sex crimes per capita versus the Brits. And one of the astonishing parts of this letter, it claims there is no evidence that people seeking refuge are more likely to commit acts of sexual violence. There is evidence. It's abundantly clear. And I put it to you, what happened to the Me Too movement? What happened to I Believe Her? Do they not believe people like you because you're right-wing, you're the wrong kind of woman?
What we're seeing as well is when survivors come forward with their story, that they are branded as far right for simply stating that they are concerned about the impact of mass immigration into this country, despite there being a direct link to this, and the fact that they've now come out and said this is completely offensive to them. Speaking from personal experience myself, a few years ago, I was walking home from work when someone was actually following me for several minutes and grabbed me from in between my legs, and I had to scream and run to get out of that situation. And then when I did report it to the police, I found out that 5 or 6 other girls were also involved and were targeted by this man. And it took 2 years, but he was eventually deported. But it did take 2 years for that to happen. Now, for other women as well who've spoken up about their experiences, there's been other people who've just come out and said, you're far right for raising these concerns, for saying that about immigration and having an impact on women's safety, and it absolutely does. So I think this is deeply offensive, and I think it also shows as well the direction that we're going in this country. That's just convenient to brand them as far right for simply stating this as a concern, which it absolutely is.
Anna McGovern, thank you for being so forthright, and thank you for the work you do. And I just find it astonishing that identity politics is forcing people to choose a side. And it's like, how do you choose a side when it should just be about women's safety? That's all that matters. We have to be colourblind. We've got to put everything to one side. Anna McGovern, thank you as ever for joining us on the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you very, very much. Now, we have a response here from the government, and they say this. This government has already removed almost 5,200 foreign national offenders in its first year in office, a 14% increase on the previous 12 months. And we will continue to crack down on any foreign nationals who come to this country and break our rules. And GBNews has also approached the Labour Party for comment because one of their MPs, Kat Eccles, she claims that degenerate native men are the biggest threat to British women, which is another astonishing tone-deaf comment, in my opinion. We await a response on that. Now, still to come. Today's debate is this: why the lefties have such a problem with our national flags. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Well done.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
It's a surprise!
honest. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 3:29 is your time. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, I'm afraid that it's more bad news for our British farmers. As new stats out today show that over 6,000 agriculture, forestry and fishing businesses closed over the past year. And this comes as the chairman of Britain's largest chicken supplier has claimed that Labour's tax hike is pushing thousands of our farmers towards financial ruin. So could we be witnessing the end of British farming happening right before our eyes? Well, let's speak now with the farmer, Richard Payne. Richard, welcome to the show. Truly sobering statistics here from the ONS. It's official data. 6,365 agriculture, forestry and fishing businesses closed over this past year. And Britain's biggest poultry supplier saying so many farmers now are simply thinking of giving up because of Labour's tax hikes. What's your take?
Good afternoon, Martin. Yeah, I mean, it's not a happy place to be at the moment in agriculture. Sort of everything seems to be against us. You know, first of all, we've got the government policy on IHT, which is, I mean, it's ridiculous. It just doesn't make any sense in the real world when you look at all our figures. You know, we are, the list sort of goes on. We are primary producers, and, you know, we are unable to either fix the price that we sell goods at, and we certainly can't put on or pass on any cost of production to a customer. That's just impossible for us. Input costs are very, very high. You know, fertilizers and plant protection products are very high. And the cost of spare parts and servicing machinery is absolutely bonkers. I mean, the bills I've had for the few things we've had to replace during this last harvest, which we finished about 2 or 3 weeks ago, are eye-watering. And I don't know who makes these numbers up, but it is really, really hard to, you know, make the whole job add up financially. It's just, it's bonkers. And I was looking in a magazine yesterday, the latest Farmers Weekly, and I see the tractor manufacturers just advertising a new tractor for £320,000. It's not even a particularly big one, but I really don't know how anyone in the UK can afford to keep going like this. It's just, many of us cannot see a way out of this. And as I said to you at the beginning, I've never known agriculture be a more unhappy place than it is now.
And Richard Payne, I'm desperately sorry to hear that. I think farmers are such an important and overlooked part of the fabric, not only of our economy, but of our culture. Food sovereignty should be the forefront of any government strategy. And instead, we're throwing ourselves open towards cheap importation, which further decimates your proud industry.
Well, we have possibly the highest food standards in the world, but we are operating in the most competitive food market, again, in the whole world. You know, it is absolutely ruthless, the buying practice and and the market that we deal in. I mean, someone said to me the other day, in agriculture, we've had deteriorating terms of business since the 1960s. I saw another good quote the other day from J.F. Kennedy. And farmers buy retail, we sell wholesale, and we pay the haulage both ways. And I can't see how it's going to change. And we hear from government that, they want to make farming more profitable. Well, unless the Labour Party can actually buck the trend of world market prices, I can't see that they've got a hope in hell. We just, we run an efficient farm. We have reasonably good yields, but I'm looking at the price that we've booked fertiliser for the coming season and looking at the forward wheat price. And I'm not alone. A lot of people are thinking, is it actually worth planting our staple crop? Because I don't think we're going to make any money from it in a year to 18 months' time. And if we do, the margins will be typically very, very slim.
Richard Payne, sobering information that I just wish they would listen to you. I sincerely do. Thank you for all the work you do. Please keep ploughing on. Sending our best wishes here from GB News. Thank you very much, Richard Payne, for joining us today. Thank you. Pleasure. I find it so heartbreaking to speak to people like that. I really, really do. Just, God. No farmers, no food. Now lots more still to come to now, 4 o'clock, including find out what over a quarter of Gen Zers are putting in their pints. But first, here's your own pick-me-up. It's Sam Francis.
Very good evening, good afternoon to you. It's just after 3:30. The Home Office is warning foreign students you must leave. 130,000 will get texts and emails telling them to go if they've overstayed. Yvette Cooper says too many are wrongly claiming asylum, but refugee groups insist many are genuine. Government borrowing costs have hit a 26-year high. 30-year bond yields surged to 5.7%, the pound sliding too, piling pressure on the Chancellor before her autumn budget. The Green Party has a new leader, Zach Polanski. He vowed to replace Labour with a Green Left, ruled out coalition and set the target of 30 MPs, branding Reform UK charlatans. In Essex, the asylum housing row could head to the Supreme Court. Epping Forest Council is challenging a ruling that allowed migrants to remain at the Bell Hotel in Epping. Sainsbury's is trialling facial recognition cameras in stores. The supermarket says it's to tackle shoplifting and abuse, but campaigners call it chilling and Orwellian. Those are the headlines this afternoon, not this evening, but I'll still be here this evening. See you soon.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Good afternoon, I'm back again with your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the rest of this week, there are signs of something a bit drier by Friday and Saturday, but for the meantime, it's looking still unsettled. There's low pressure nearby. We have another system waiting out towards the west, but even at the moment, there is a feature pushing its way across the southern parts. That's brought some persistent rain earlier on today. There are also plenty of showers around at the moment. For many, those showers are going to clear away, so there will be some dry weather for a time. Before that, other system that I highlighted pushes in from the southwest, so across much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland. It is going to turn wet and windy as we go through the early hours of tomorrow. With that then, temperatures not dropping a huge amount for most, though across some parts of Scotland where it stays dry and clear, it could turn a bit fresh. Now, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a wet and windy picture for many. Starting off wet and windy across the southern counties, some heavy, persistent rain here. Also, plenty of wet weather further north across much of England, Wales, Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. The rain here could be heavy at times too, particularly a wet start to the day for many. However, across parts of northern western Scotland, it could actually start the day largely fine. Even some sunshine breaking through, though I think it will turn a bit cloudier, even a bit wetter wetter here as we go through the day. Elsewhere, there will be more persistent rain at times across parts of Scotland, Northern England and perhaps Northern Ireland. For the rest of England and Wales, the rain will clear away, but then heavy showers following in behind, albeit with some sunny spells in between. Worth bearing in mind that we will have some strong winds, risk of coastal gales towards the south, and so those winds will take the edge off the temperatures, even though they're around average for the time of year. More unsettled weather to come across northern parts, particularly the northeast as we go through the end of the day, but elsewhere things starting to turn a little bit drier, a little bit calmer, and that takes us into, well, another showery day actually on Thursday, but Friday and Saturday for many will be mostly dry.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Currently, the M73 northbound at Junction 2A is closed due to essential roadworks. Drivers should use the signed diversion route. In West Sussex, a collision on the A27 westbound between the A280 and the A284 near Arundel has all lanes closed. A collision on the A35 eastbound between the A3066 and the A37 in Dorset is causing complete shutdown of all lanes, adding to delays. And on the trains, disruption is affecting Grand Central services in the Eaglescliffe area, while London North Western Railway has buses replacing trains between Watford Junction and St Albans Abbey. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's 3:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, says that police have flagged over 1,200 past cases of rape gang abuse for review since January. Now, of those, 216 cases are being fast-tracked as urgent. And that's as she also told MPs the government is close to launching a national inquiry into abuse gangs. Well, here to tell us more is GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, we've got a bit of a breakthrough here, some good news at last for the Labour Party.
Well, Martin, it's been a long time waiting for this update. Almost 3 months since Baroness Casey made that recommendation for a national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal and, of course, for there to be a national police investigation. But we've got updates on both of those probes today, with the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, saying that the process for selecting a chair of the national inquiry was closing in on a decision, and that survivors had been engaged over the summer and that a panel had been formed. And then on the national police investigation, we were told that it's now underway. It's called Operation Beaconport, which the NCA are leading. We also heard how it was including the Task Force of Organised Exploitation and the CSE Task Force, which was launched by the last government in 2023, but this government, they say, they've made an 11% rise in its number of arrests, over 820 arrests since Labour came into power last July. But it was in comments after Jess Phillips made her statement to the House of Commons this afternoon that I think actually some of the more interesting information came out, because the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, had asked if she would confirm that those in authority who covered up the abuse or looked the other way in order to protect so-called community cohesion would be prosecuted. She said that. Does she agree with me that those who deliberately covered this up should be prosecuted for misconduct in a public office? Here's what Jess Phillips had to say to that.
Let me say and be very clear, and it be taken away by everybody who I'm sure has the victim's best interests at heart, that it will cover what it needs to cover to uncover the truth. And no stone will be left unturned. And that will make difficult conversations for people. And if people are found by our court system to have undermined and had, disgrace in public office, then of course they should be sent to prison. However, that has never happened to date in these cases. And so, of course, I very much hope that we uncover the kind of social workers that he referred to, and I hope that they face the full force of everything that they deserve.
Well, yet more promises for survivors and victims of these grooming gangs. This inquiry will now leave no stone left unturned. But there was something of a piece of information for Jess Phillips to concede there, which, of course, this hasn't happened before. There hasn't been public officials being prosecuted for misconduct in a public office before. But of course, that is what the public want. Polling for GB News in January revealing that people who covered up this abuse should absolutely be punished, according to all people across the United Kingdom, regardless of the political party they vote for. There was a majority in all cases. So more promises for victims and their families today, but it does seem, Martin, as though the government is getting a step closer towards that national inquiry being launched, though I did hear quite a lot of frustration from Tory benches opposite in the Commons after that announcement concluded, saying they're going to keep pressing to wait for more information. The government could point to the recess they've just had, but still, with nearly 3 months going, a lot of survivors, victims and their families say this process should be underway. And one final point, Martin, House of Commons quite empty today for that update from Jess Phillips. There were representatives from most parties, but not all. It just did look like a rather quiet return to term for these MPs on an issue of such significance. And I've heard a few critical remarks about that in the last couple of hours as well.
Johnny, this is worth dwelling on. This is a significant story, and it's significant for a number of reasons. Firstly, this is the same Jess Phillips who voted against a rape gang inquiry. This is the same Labour Party that had to be kicked and dragging into having an inquiry of this nature. And you're absolutely right. For the first time now, councillors, politicians, police officers, people who are involved in taxi firms, who got those deals, perhaps from family members, anybody could finally be prosecuted. Charlie, this is a huge victory for survivors, and no doubt a lot of that has been forced down the road by your excellent work.
Well, Martin, I think it is a breakthrough because there has been that uncertainty since that announcement in January when the government said, as Sir Keir Starmer was flying to Canada for that summit, when he told our political editor, Christopher Hope, that he would launch a national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. As he was flying away from the country making that announcement, there hasn't really been much information given on what would happen next, which has led to so many questions swirling about what sort of powers it might have and who it might probe. And that was really central to a lot of the questions being asked by the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, today. He was asking for clarification on who it might go after, which powers it might have to get to the truth. But Jess Phillips being really unequivocal in her response there, saying that difficult conversations would need to be had, no stone left unturned. It's a cliche that survivors and victims have heard countless times over the years. But if there is a national inquiry with statutory powers, then those stones that haven't been nudged before could be at risk of being unturned and so turned over and really properly probed by the authorities. So it is a breakthrough, but again, Martin, it's a lot of words and the proof will be in action.
Charlie Peters, I really want to dwell on this because it's incredible. I think you've told me before, not a single police officer in Greater Manchester was ever prosecuted, right, for anything that ever happened historically. So how far up the food chain might this go? How far back may it go? A lot of those officers now tucked up on cosy pensions, out of the public light. A lot of those public safety workers work in Australia, work overseas. People who were meant to be child protection agents in places like Rotherham now performing the same jobs, Charlie Peters, in different countries. Will they be feeling the finger?
Well, there have been so many instances of swirling around my mind since Jess Phillips made that statement about instances I'm aware of that have been revealed in the public, some yet to be released for legal reasons and other restrictions. But there will be certainly cases where a lot of people in public office will be extremely nervous. So there's just one I want to bring forward now, just to paint an example of the sort of people who should really be extremely concerned about information that could be forced out through investigative powers for an inquiry. In Greater Manchester, in Rochdale, in the mid-2000s, there was a gold level meeting, which means a meeting in the police held by chief constables, assistant chief constables, about information they had about suspected abusers in Rochdale and in Greater Manchester. And they took the decision to close that policing operation, but the notes from that meeting were not available. They've gone missing. I think with a national inquiry, that instance is well known about. There should be the powers required to bring those people forward, to seriously question them and those around them, to work out why those decisions were taken and why that information went missing. Because we know in so many cases, the decision to prioritise so-called community cohesion came ahead of the desire and the need to protect children, most of them girls, from these sorts of abuse gangs. But Martin, there were many other people, social workers included, I think, who will be nervous, perhaps even terrified about what this inquiry might do.
Charlie Peters, good. A lot of those people perhaps should be living in fear of them getting a knock in the middle of the night. Charlie Peters, this is an incredible story. Please, let's talk about it more throughout the rest of the show. A huge, huge breakthrough. No stone remained unturned. That quote, we need to sign, seal and deliver and make sure that's delivered upon. Charlie Peters, excellent. Thank you, as ever, my friend. Superb. Now, for some holiday sun this year, then here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Plenty of September sunshine on offer around the Mediterranean at the moment. There are a few showers in Croatia. They'll clear away. And some wet and windy weather across the far north of Portugal and the northwest of Spain. But most of Spain, the Balearics dry and sunny. Italy turning sunny as well after some heavy showers earlier in the week. Now, the showers across Croatia, they are clearing away, and much of the Greek islands also fine, dry and sunny. And that'll generally continue throughout this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Ministers are preparing the biggest shake-up of driving rules for 2 decades, and drivers over the age of 70 would be banned from the roads if they fail compulsory eye tests.
Changes are expected to be included in a new road safety strategy document to be published in the autumn.
And we found this short clip of your driving test, Andrew.
The way he's taking that corner is going down on record, and it'll be one of the things on which his driving ability will be assessed.
How rude.
Well, actually, it's quite funny, actually. I passed my driving test in a pea green Volkswagen Beetle.
Wow!
I did.
What?
Second time.
I've passed third time, so...
Third?
Yeah.
But in those days, I mean, the road safety test was literally the driving instructor fired five or six questions at you at the end.
Yeah.
That was it.
As long as you hadn't crashed, you were through.
Yeah, you were through. So,
those were the days.
They were. But let's talk to the motoring journalist, Quentin Wilson, who's very well known to this programme.
It was always a 2 wheels good, 4 wheels bad mantra, and only now are they begin to see that the electorate is really worried about not just the condition of our roads, but the people driving on them and their skills as well. So this idea that we've got to have driving a sight test for people over 70. Why would you not do this? I mean, it's blindly, if you'll pardon the pun, simple. You really people who can't see in a car from driving, and anybody who objects to that is really, really sort of selfish. Then you've got to look at driving standards. You know, I've been campaigning for kids to be taught at school hazard perception and things like that, and just increase the ability, the skills of our driving population, because you see all these stats now, and they're going up and up and up.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 3:52 with me, Martin Daubney on GB News. Now it's nothing sacred because Gen Z are coming after the Great British Pint. The new generation of pub goers are asking for a lager or even an ale on the rocks. That's it, with ice. Apparently allows for extra hydration whilst drinking and waters down the alcohol. What on earth are they thinking? Let's speak now to pub landlord Mark Bridgen. Mark, I've got to say, mate, I've never seen anybody do this. I occasionally order ice myself. I always get it in a glass on the side because I know it takes away beer I'm paying for. Who on earth, though, orders ice in a pint of beer?
Good afternoon. I don't know that we've had anyone in asking for it yet. I'll have to check with my barman. I think I might have experienced it in much sunnier climes in a very kind of lemony lager, but no, it's not for me, and certainly not in a real ale. I mean, I think if they asked me for ice in a real ale, I think I'd probably refuse that. And as for lagers, I mean, look, there was, when we were younger chaps, there was the whole thing of ice in the cider, which helped a certain brand move a ton of cider. And actually, when it comes to it, if a bunch of young people want to come in my pub paying for beer, they can put in it what they like.
Fair point. But I've got to say, I like red wine chilled. Each to their own. But I just think you should go further. Rather than not serving them, I think you should bar them. If somebody orders, ice in a pint of real ale, I reckon kick them out the door, mate.
Yeah, the real ale would be very, very upsetting. I think a bunch of weirdy beardies at camera might fall off their bar stools and croak. But joking aside, we've had lots of conversations about pubs. If a bunch of TikTokers want to come into the Dog at Wingham and buy a load of beer and TikTok away and put ice in it, then good luck to them. But I don't think I'll be joining them. I'll be sticking. Imagine if they asked for it in Guinness, it would just be insane.
OK, Mark Bridgen, thank you. We have to leave it there. And a great plug for your pub there, right there, and beautiful stuff. This is GB News. Still to come, Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips unveils a new plan to clamp down on rape gangs. An exclusive with Charlie Peters. That's next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, the changeable weather is going to continue as we go through today. Yes, most of us will see some bright or sunny breaks, but there will also be some showers, even some longer spells of rain, because low pressure still firmly in control. A mature low to the north of the UK, and then another smaller low pressure system has pushed in from the south, and it's this that's been the driving force for some persistent rain across southern parts through this morning, and there will be some more persistent rain across parts of the southeast as we go through this afternoon. Elsewhere, a mixture of some bright sunny spells, but also a fair few showers, and some of them could be heavy, maybe even thundery. If you catch any of those bright sunny spells, it's not going to feel too bad. Relatively warm, actually, with temperatures in the low 20s for some and winds lighter than yesterday. Then, as we go through the end of today, while across parts of the southeast, still some persistent rain for a little while yet, eventually clearing away towards the east. Otherwise, still a fair few showers continuing, and some of them could be heavy. There could be some thunder, some hail, some lightning mixed in, especially across some parts of Scotland, particularly towards the northwest. This is where we're going to see the heaviest, most frequent showers. Otherwise, as we go through the night, most of the showers are actually going to die out, so it is going to turn largely dry with some clear skies, but only for a short period of time. That's because there's more wet and windy weather pushing in from the southwest as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning, spreading across much of England, Wales and also Northern Ireland. Under the wet and windy weather, while temperatures won't drop a huge amount, mid-teens for many places, but a fair few degrees fresher than this for some parts of Scotland where we get clearer skies. Tomorrow is then going to be a wet and windy day. Some heavy rain around, though the more persistent rain clearing away from England as we go through into the afternoon, with some hefty showers following in behind. More wet weather, though, across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, with the persistent rain continuing. Also, watch out for the strong winds, and with those, temperatures are really academic. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M73 at Junction 2 northbound is currently closed for essential roadworks. Motorists should use the sign diversion and anticipate longer journey times. On the A27 westbound, between the A280 and the A284 near Arundel, a significant accident has been reported closing all lanes. In Dorset, the A35 eastbound between the A3066 and the junction with the A37 is fully closed due to a collision, and on the trains, anticipate disruptions on Avanti West Coast services between Crewe and Stockport, and on Chiltern Railways between Dorridge and Birmingham Moor Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. Another GB News exclusive on today's show as the Grooming Task Force arrests surge in the first year of the Labour government, as the Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips says no stone will be left unturned. Could that mean finally politicians, police and social workers could finally be jailed for their part in the cover-up of rape gangs' Britain's shame? And it's Sir Keir Starmer's birthday today, but a grim new opinion poll doesn't bring many happy returns for the under-fire PM, whose popularity has slumped to an all-time low. Still, at least Sir Keir can look forward to his birthday buffet. I wonder what's on the menu.
Return of the sausages.
And a group of high-powered celebrities and politicians and lovies have written an astonishing open letter urging so-called right-wingers to stop linking immigration to sex abuse. On today's show, I'll be joined by a furious women's rights campaigner who says, "I'll never be silenced by these bullies." And also on today's show, Kemi Badenoch has done a U-turn on North Sea oil after a 75% Tory windfall tax and punishing net zero targets. Today, the Tory leader pledged to extract as much oil as possible. I'll be joined by the former Tory MP for Aberdeen South, who's now defected to Reform, who says Kemi cannot be trusted. And the Labour Party has got itself into a flap about flags again. This time, MP Clive Lewis has blasted so-called far-right groups for their extreme views when hanging St George's flags from lampposts. Today's debate is quite simple. Why do lefties have such a problem with our national flags? And stay tuned to find out what over a quarter of Gen Zers are putting in their pints. They're destroying their beer with ice. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. We've got an incredible exclusive coming up from Charlie Peters in a moment, a journalist who's done more than perhaps anybody to make sure survivors of rape gangs and sexual abuse get their moment of justice. Today, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, said no stone will remain unturned about looking back into the past cover-ups, even intimating anybody could be jailed for their part in disgracing public office. Does that mean that potentially Labour politicians, councillors, top police officers, social workers, taxi firm workers, family members, anybody involved in Britain's shame of the rape gangs could at long last be living in fear of their door getting knocked on in the night? Incredible breakthrough. That's coming up from our man Charlie Peters straight after your latest news headlines. Get in touch usual way, gbnews.com/YourSaver. Now, here are all your headlines with our man Sam Francis.
Hello, 4 o'clock. The top story this hour. The government has launched a direct messaging campaign warning foreign students they face removal if they've overstayed their visas. Around 130,000 international students and their families will be contacted by text and email, telling them they must leave the UK if they have no right to remain. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says some are wrongly claiming asylum when nothing has changed in their home countries. A trend, she warns, is putting pressure on asylum accommodation. But refugee charities say many claims are genuine and students may only feel safe to seek protection once they reach the UK. The government's borrowing costs have soared to their highest level since 1998, piling pressure on the Chancellor ahead of her autumn budget. The interest rate on 30-year bonds hit 5.7% today, making it more expensive for Britain to service its debt. The pound also slipped more than 1% against the dollar. Rachel Reeves now faces what analysts call highly difficult choices to stick to her fiscal rules. Labour has ruled out raising income tax, VAT or national insurance, fuelling speculation over property taxes and frozen thresholds instead. Critics say the market sell-off is a warning shot, while Number 10 insists it remains ironclad in its commitment to sound finances. Kemi Badenoch says a Conservative government would make North Sea oil and gas the cornerstone of Britain's economy and hit out at Labour for treating the sector as, well, in her words, a relic of the past. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, though, accused the Conservatives of peddling the same failed energy policy and warned it would hurt working people, insisting Labour's clean energy sprint will secure jobs of the future. Speaking to industry leaders in Aberdeen today, the Tory leader promised to scrap Labour's block on new licences, rename the North Sea regulator and restore what she calls common sense to energy policy.
It will help people with their energy bills by making sure that we increase supply. 100% of the gas that is taken from the North Sea is used in the UK. And what we're seeing right now with sky-high energy bills is a result of a net zero mandate that is simply not working. And we need both Labour and the SNP to change course. It does matter because we help influence the market. And you look at countries like Norway who are drilling right in this very basin in the North Sea. We need to make sure that we're also able to provide supply. At the moment, European countries are still buying oil and gas from Russia. I think it would be a lot better if they bought it from Aberdeen.
In other news, the Green Party has a new leader and he's setting his sights firmly on Labour. Zach Polanski, a London Assembly member and the party's former deputy, won by a landslide, more than 20,000 votes to 3,700 for his rivals. In victory speech, Polanski vowed to build a green left to replace Labour, ruling out coalition with Sir Keir Starmer's party and setting an ambitious target of 30 MPs at the next election. He also branded Reform UK charlatans and pledged to welcome asylum seekers through safe routes, insisting, quote, "This country needs immigration." The government is under fire for making almost no progress on its promised inquiry into grooming gangs. Home Office Minister Jess Phillips told MPs the search for a chair is in its final stages and that victims will help approve the appointment. She insisted the probe will leave no stone unturned and will examine officials accused of covering up abuse. But the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said survivors feel left in the dark and accused ministers of being dragged, kicking and screaming every step of the way. Well, the inquiry was first announced in June after Baroness Casey warned of widespread exploitation across England and Wales. The row over asylum housing in Essex could be heading to the Supreme Court. Epping Forest District Council has asked for permission to appeal after the Court of Appeal overturned its injunction against the Bell Hotel in Epping. The ruling had originally ordered 138 asylum seekers to leave by the 12th of September. The judges said that decision was seriously flawed in principle. Council leader Chris Whitbread argues the site has put an intolerable strain on the community, but ministers say the judgment helps the government close hotels in a more planned and orderly way. Refugee groups have welcomed the decision, warning protests must not dictate asylum policy. And Sainsbury's is rolling out facial recognition technology in a bid to crack down on shoplifting and abuse in its stores. The UK's second largest supermarket has begun an 8-week trial in London and in Bath, working with a security firm ahead of a possible nationwide rollout. Bosses say the system will only flag individuals reported for theft or aggression, with other images instantly deleted. But privacy groups have branded the move deeply disproportionate and chilling, warning of an Orwellian expansion of surveillance. Sainsbury's, though, insists it's about safety, not monitoring customers. That is the news on GB News. I'll be back in half an hour. Next, though, let's take a quick look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, 4 o'clock and the pound will buy you $1.3371 and €1.1496. The price of gold, £2,603.95 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,152 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, says that police have flagged over 1,200 past cases of grooming abuse for review since January. Now, of those, 216 cases are being fast-tracked as urgent. And that's, as she told MPs, the government is close to launching a national inquiry into rape gangs. Now, here to tell us more is GB News' national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, welcome back. When you broke this story about 15 minutes ago, it blew my mind. I want to try and convey the scope, the magnitude, the possibility of what could come here, finally, to help rape gang victims get abuse, because there's one line that really leaps out in this: no stone will remain unturned in the scope of this investigation. Charlie Peters, is a huge breakthrough. Tell us more.
Well, Martin, the Home Office would not give us advance sight of Jess Phillips's comments, her statement to the House this afternoon. I really wasn't sure what to expect. In the end, it was quite a lengthy statement, updating about decisions taken and actions that had taken place over the summer with regards to this national inquiry announced in June, and also alongside it, the national policing investigation, both recommended by Baroness Casey after her audit into group-based CSE and abuse. But it wasn't really in those prepared remarks that we learnt anything particularly extraordinary. She told us some updated statistics about arrests and also about the work of the CSE task force, which was launched in 2023 by the last government after a GBNews investigation. But it was in the responses to the opposition that I think we learnt a little bit more about what the government is planning, because the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, urged the government to provide more information, saying that they had U-turned on the inquiry earlier in the year and now they were delaying their release of information, failing to find a chair, although the minister had just insisted they were closing in on the chair of the inquiry being announced. But Chris Philp asked for assurance that anyone who covered up the abuse in public office would face prosecution. And it was that which Jess Phillips started her response with. Here's what she had to say.
Let me say and be very clear, and it be taken away by everybody who I'm sure has the victim's best interests at heart, that it will cover what it needs to cover to uncover the truth. And no stone will be left unturned. And that will make difficult conversations for people. And if people are found by our court system to have undermined and had, disgrace in public office, then of course they should be sent to prison. However, that has never happened to date in these cases. And so, of course, I very much hope that we uncover the kind of social workers that he referred to, and I hope that they face the full force of everything that they deserve.
Well, Jess Phillips hopes that they will face the full force of the law, and I have to say survivors, their families, campaigners and lawyers who work with them have been saying that for a very long time indeed. And Jess Phillips almost appears to concede that point in her response, saying this hasn't happened before in previous inquiries and investigations, even though vast and shocking failures by the public bodies have been exposed, such as police officers looking the other way, literally looking the other way when they encounter abuse, teachers, NHS workers, public officials within local authorities all choosing to ignore the issue for fear of rocking the multicultural boat, as one former Labour MP put it in Rotherham. There has not been a prosecution. I think a lot of survivors and ones I've been speaking to this afternoon tell me that they are concerned this is yet more talk and lack of action. And with this almost 3 months since the inquiry was announced, Martin, they are waiting for some proper announcements. But it is to them still heartening to hear that. One lawyer who represents dozens of victims in the North telling me just while that clip was playing from Jess Phillips that they were sort of glad to hear these sorts of messages being delivered by a minister, but insisting and reminding us again that this has never happened. There haven't actually ever been those successful prosecutions. Now, another interesting comment we heard during this session in the Commons this afternoon, Martin, came from Paul Ward, the MP for Rochdale, who's regularly come on the channel to speak about this issue as well. He's firmly aware of the crisis that has taken place in his constituency. And he said that as recently as this year, at a trial that GB News attended of 7 men who've all been found guilty of abusing children in Rochdale in the mid-2000s, it was said that the social workers in that case, for those 2 complainants, those 2 girls, they were described as prostitutes. The prosecution knew that. They read it out in their case against these men. And I think in that case and in several others where there have been that sort of language and dismissal of victims of child sexual exploitation, the question's got to be asked. Will those public officials be facing charges or investigations, or even perhaps be named? Because it's remarkable, isn't it, to hear a prosecuting barrister from the Crown Prosecution Service sort of outline how social workers dismiss these children. But I think a lot of people attending those trials, listening to that evidence, are thinking, well, when are those people going to be held account for what they did as well? Jess Phillips says that she hopes that if information is uncovered about it, then it can be prosecuted. But, Martin, we already know so much about the failures that took place in this crisis. So potentially it is reassuring to know that that is something this inquiry will include. Because at the start, when this was announced in June, as the PM was flying to Canada, there were concerns, Martin, that it wouldn't include Westminster, that this inquiry would be a fact-finding mission, that it might not have statutory powers to go after all people involved in the cover-up. This is more heartening and positive noise that it could be going in that direction.
Charlie Peters, it's an astonishing change of position. It's the Labour Party that whipped against a national rape gang inquiry repeatedly. They had to be kicked, dragging and screaming into this, and now we have it. We need to repeat this to make sure that this happens. This is Jess Phillips. If people are found by our court system to have undermined and disgraced public office, then of course they should be sent to prison. Charlie Peters, that should go as high up the food chain as required and as far back in time as required. And as we said before, a lot of those disgraced safeguarding officers from places like Rotherham now working all around the world in different countries doing very similar jobs. No doubt, Charlie Peters, you could draw up a list of people that you think should be getting a knock at their door. I hope you supply that list to Jess Phillips, because we need to make sure that this isn't more hot air, isn't more empty promises, but it's actual action for those survivors that desperately deserve justice after all these years, Charlie Peters.
Yes, Martin, it's police officers, I think, that should really be in the firing line of this investigation, because they have had the most opportunity to really engage with this issue over time. And it's been interesting to listen to politicians on the right of British politics who've started to engage with this issue more seriously over the last year or so, saying that information that they've uncovered or read about through this grooming gang scandal, the abuse networks around the country, it's made them realise that perhaps the police aren't always their friend, that actually there are problems to properly engage with and process about how police constables and indeed senior leaders, inspectors, superintendents, all the way up to assistant chief constables, have on occasion failed to protect women and girls. And we took the very interesting testimony of John Pecos in April, a former senior officer in Oldham who, after he retired, started working for a charity in Bradford. He gathered a lot of information about trafficking outside of a children's home. We revealed this information for the first time exclusively on GB News, speaking also to witnesses who worked with him, including former members of the Royal Military Police. Very credible accounts of those incidents. And he said that police officers threatened him with arrest in front of social workers in meetings in Bradford when he brought forward information. Now, at the time, the West Yorkshire Police said they didn't have any reports that he'd made, but of course, John Pecos told us he was threatened with arrest, so he didn't make any reports. He left the town. And the local council, Bradford, never gave us a statement about that story. But it just goes to show, Martin, that there are so many cases that we know of, and many more that might be revealed when people like John Pecos have the confidence to come forward in a national inquiry.
Well, Charlie Peters, it feels like a huge breakthrough just getting the justice that they deserve. But nevertheless, we have to take these victories and thank you for your work, just making sure this story never, ever was allowed to be pushed aside like it has been for so many years. Hats off to Chris Philp for putting Jess Phillips on the spot today. And it feels remarkable. It really does. I just think we've got to keep pushing on this. Thank you, Charlie Peters. Superb stuff. Thanks for joining me on the show today. Wow. Now, moving on. Keir Starmer waded into the ongoing debate about flags.
I'm very encouraging of flags. I think they're patriotic and I think they're a great symbol of our nation. I don't think they should be devalued and belittled, and I think sometimes when they're used purely for divisive purposes, it actually devalues the flag. I don't want to see that. I'm proud of our flag. I sit in front of our flag and I'm very, very proud to do so.
Well, the Prime Minister's comments come following the launch of an online campaign called Operation Raise the Colours, which has resulted in several local authorities removing flags from public infrastructure. So what was to make of the Prime Minister's comments? Is he suddenly a born-again patriot? To debate this, I'm joined by the historian, the broadcaster, great friend of the show, Rafe Haidel-Manku, and the former Labour aide, Stella Santakiku. Welcome, Stella. Always a pleasure to have you both. Let's start with you if we can, Rafe. What is it about the Labour Party getting themselves into a terminal flap about flags? Sir Keir Starmer saying he's a patriot. He's got a St George's flag at home, if you believe that. Yvette Cooper went one further. She's got bunting and a tablecloth. And yet Clive Lewis, the MP for Norwich for the Labour Party, saying it's the work of extremists to hoist St George's flags on lampposts. I put it to you, why have the left got such a problem with British national flags?
Because the left are internationalists. The idea of the nation state is anathema to them. That's why, of course, many on the left or the far left are in favour of open borders. And so nationalism to them is actually the worst thing you can be. Of course, it's been very amusing to see the performative actions of people like Yvette Cooper. I mean, it sounds as if it's the coronation or the Diamond Jubilee every day of the week at her house. The number of flags apparently she has, even Union Jack tablecloths. This is, of course, because the Labour Party didn't realise that the traditional working classes of Britain are small c conservative, they're patriotic. It came back to bite them in the rear very badly over the last decade. We saw that under Jeremy Corbyn. They felt the Labour Party was an unpatriotic party. And so what we're seeing today really is the English are flying their flags not so much as an act of bombastic jingoism, it's an act of a community that feels threatened and generally feels as if it's losing its identity. And so the flag that we're seeing being flown is almost a symbol of distress to sort of rally the people at a time of peril. And this is a situation created entirely by the British establishment, by the Labour Party, by the Tories, by the metropolitan elite. For the past quarter of a century, the English have been betrayed and abandoned by their leaders failed by their institutions. They've seen their English identity attacked and traduced. Their history and their culture has been denigrated and undermined, whilst other identities have been celebrated, and that sticks in the craw. And thanks to mass immigration and multiculturalism, they've seen their towns and cities change beyond all recognition. And so they're flying the flag almost as a last resort, saying we've been abandoned by everybody. No one else is defending or standing up for us, so we need to stand up for ourselves.
Stella, I'd like to bring you in now, and I want to ask you a direct question, and it's this. Why is it that the people on the left always seem to judge the English by the worst people who bear the flag, football hooligans, the EDL, and yet you would never do that, for example, with the Palestinian flag, which is clearly flown by those who support Hamas? But, oh no, that's just a few bad apples. What is the particular problem that the left seems to have with the St George's flag?
You make a fair point, but it's not everyone on the left. It's not even most people on the left. In the same way that, as you say, that people who like to be patriotic about the UK, we are always judging them by their worst example. We're doing the same thing with left-wing people. Not everybody on the left. Me, for example, I have the British flag in my house. I also have English flag bunting in my house. When after the first 10 years I spent in the UK, I had a party in my house to celebrate the fact that I had been in the UK for 10 years, because I feel very patriotic about the UK, even though I wasn't born here. I feel like this country is amazing. I love British people. I feel like it has treated me really well. I really, really identify with British people. I care deeply about British people. And I do not feel that this has anything to do with the fact that when it comes to politics and specifically economic policy, I think that the vast majority of working people are getting the wrong end of the stick. And I think that it is unfair that there is continuous income inequality that is just being exaggerated the more time passes. And this is why I'm left-wing. I'm not left-wing because I believe that people should not be allowed to have an identity that is tethered to the place that they were raised, the culture that they were raised in. But you know, we're looking at all of these videos of people who are vandalizing, really, their local neighborhoods. I saw an example of someone who painted graffiti at the back of a church. How does that show that you're proud of your country? Somebody has to go and clear that up. The council is not doing that because they believe that the British flag is offensive all the time, but it does. At what point does it become litter? So I agree with Keir Starmer. It cheapens it. It devalues it.
OK, well, there we go, Rafe. So a glorious defence there of the St George's flag, Stella. Thank you very much. But then at the end, again, Rafe, we have this idea that it cheapens it. And there is this feeling that if you hoist a flag outside an asylum hotel, you are a far-right extremist. It was only a year ago. Keir Starmer called everyone at the protests far-right.
It's the context, right?
People have seen their towns and their cities change beyond all recognition from the time that they grew up. They've seen the importation of cultural practices and behaviours that are completely anathema to our way of life. This is a visceral reaction to that, and you can't blame them. The English people have been abandoned by their leaders, been betrayed by them. This was completely avoidable had the governments, Tory and Labour, taken the actions that they were voted in to act on immigration and so forth. And look, we live in an era of identity politics, which everyone is actively encouraged to celebrate their identity, with one exception, and that's the English. When the Scots and the Welsh wave their flags and sing their anthems with great gusto, quite rightly, it's called progressive nationalism. When the English do it, it's racist. And the English have had enough of that. You can only keep a good people down so long, and the English are finally taking a stand. I remember G.K. Chesterton's famous words, "For we are the people of England that have not spoken yet." Well, the English have now found their voice, and they are speaking out. And it's almost as if the establishment are frightened of English nationalism, knowing that England is by far the most dominant partner in the EU. I remember when Britain left the European Union, they lowered the EU flag outside London City Hall. So I said to Sadiq Khan, you should replace it with the English flag, given that London is the capital of England. That was rejected. That's a sort of a derision. When Ken Livingstone was mayor of London, he gave funding for a St. Patrick's Day parade, but refused funding for a St. George's Day parade because he thought it was xenophobic and divisive. And yet you go to Edinburgh, you go to Belfast, you go to Cardiff, you'll see those national flags are there. The English were reluctant to fly their flag for being called racist, but they've had enough. They're not listening to that anymore.
OK, we have to leave it there. Run out of time. Thank you to proud patriots there, Stella. I never had you down as a secret English patriot. Makes me love you even more. Superb, the pair of you. Thank you very much, Rafe and Stella. Always an absolute pleasure. Now, here's what Clive Lewis had to say in response to criticism of his comments. He said, I have received multiple abusive emails, including a death threat, which has been reported to the police for a quote that has unfortunately been taken out of context. I said, in full. Most people say they fly the St George's Cross out of pride, and that's probably even true for some of those putting them on lampposts. But far-right groups are using these flags to mark territory and intimidate the vast majority who reject their extreme views. They're trying to drag the flag back into being just their flag, only for their purposes of division and intolerance. And doing the brilliant way our multi-heritage England teams turned it into one of unity and pride. I've raised residents' concerns with County Council. They can't look the other way when extremists use our streets to send an intimidating message. Coming next, Kemi Badenoch has done a U-turn on North Sea oil after a 75% Tory windfall tax and punishing net zero targets. The Tory leader today pledged to extract as much oil as possible. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:31. I'm Martin Daubney on GBNews. Now, delighted to say I've been joined in the studio by the Liberal Democrat MP, Max Wilkinson. Just strolled over from being back at Max. Welcome to the show. You've come in to talk about a couple of things. I want to get your opinion on the St George's flag. I understand you're a keen England football fan. But before that, you've had a pop at Reform. You've called them a J.D. Vance tribute act. Why?
Well, there's a lot of concern, isn't there, about what's going on with the ban on journalism in Nottinghamshire. The new Reform Council leader has said that basically he won't be talking to the press directly, and nor should any of his councillors. And there's an absolutely huge budget of taxpayers' money being spent in Nottinghamshire, and they should be accountable to the local people who might want questions asked about how the bins are being picked up, how planning's happening in that area, adult social services and all sorts of things. I'm a former local newspaper journalist, Martin, and if in the time when I was reporting on local councils someone had said, we're not going to answer your questions, we're not going to answer your phone, we're not going to be accountable to you, I would have thought it was an absolute outrage because, you know, as a Liberal and someone who believes in accountability, I think it's really important that politicians, when they're in charge of things, make themselves accountable. Actually, I think this is a bit of a betrayal of British values.
And I believe it was Richard Tice who said that the journalist from Nottingham Live, he called them activists. Now, the editor of Nottingham Live, Natalie Fay, I've got to say, is a good friend of mine. I had her on the show many times. I've never had a problem at all. We're going to get her on the show tomorrow to talk this one through. But can I move on to the broader topic now of the St George's flag? We've been debating earlier on today. It seems to be a huge problem amongst those on the political left about the St George's flag being co-opted. The worst use of those flags is often fanned out to incorporate almost everybody. Everybody's portrayed as right-wing or far-right if they brandish the St George's flag. Seems to be unique. I don't ever hear that about the Scottish flag or the Welsh flag or the Palestinian flag, dare I say. Max, are you a proud St George's flag waver?
Hey, well, I'm not scared of flags, Martin. I think it's all about how they're being deployed, right? When I was an England fan, and I followed England home and away when Steve McLaren was the manager, and I can tell you that was not an easy time to be an England fan.
The Wally with the Brolly years?
I was there at that game, and I was there for the game where Paul Robinson accidentally let the ball trickle over his foot on the Gary Neville back pass away in Zagreb. So I've seen the good and the bad. I slept in a St George's Cross I think, in Budapest airport overnight after that game, after being kept in the ground for 2 hours. I'm not scared of England flags. I think it's all about how they're being deployed and how they're being used. And, you know, going back a few years, in the last Euros, I think it was 2021, the delayed Euros, I went round my council ward at the time and thanked everyone by delivering a letter who was putting up the St George's flag in support of Gareth Southgate's team, because I think that's the right thing to do. Displays of patriotism are a good thing. If the flag's being used for the wrong reasons, I think that's what we should be worried about. But, you know, each to their own.
But who gets to decide what the wrong reasons are? For example, a lot of people in places like Epping and all around the country, they believe that they are deploying a flag in the right way. If they believe that their community is being changed without them ever having a say, they're talking about sexual assaults, about a rise in crime in their community. They feel, we had Rafe Hagel-Mancoux on the show moments ago who was saying it feels like a country sending out a distress signal. British people, English people do feel very, very concerned about the way their country is changing before their eyes without them having a say, a voice, and when they raise a flag, they're branded as far right. So is it not a bit rich to sort of tell people how they should use flags in the correct way? They can do what they want. It's a free country. As you said earlier, why put rules on them?
Well, I think if I'm putting up a flag outside my own house, that's different to if I'm painting one on a roundabout, for example, or if I'm putting one up on a public lamppost. I have to say I'm not massively offended by a flag being put up anywhere, particularly if it's St George's Cross or the Union flag. But I think people need to be aware, you know, do it within the rules.
But the rules state, well, as you said at the start, you know, we live in a free country. So if somebody feels that it's their right to raise a St George's flag because they feel that their town has changed, then that's their right as part of being a free Briton.
Well, put it on your own house. I think that's perfectly fine. But if it's on, you know, a local council lamppost, that's for the council to decide, isn't it? Whether they will allow it to happen. And same on lampposts, roundabouts, all those sorts of things.
But Max, don't you think it's fair to say that the councils have had something of a two-tiered approach to this? Palestinian flags have been flapping around for 2 years. None of them were taken down. None of them. Well, and yet St George's flags have been clipped down by local authorities within 24 hours oftentimes. Two-tiered policy on flags.
So my suggestion is councils ought to be left to get on with enforcing the rules as they see fit in the local areas. I can only speak for my local area. I haven't seen any Palestinian flags up from lampposts. I've not seen any Palestinian flags painted on the ground or anything like that either. But then I haven't seen too many St George's flags either. There are some that are flying around in Cheltenham and Nudian flags. It's not something that particularly concerns me as long as it's done in the right way.
Okay, well, thanks for joining the studio. It's an absolute pleasure, Max Wilkinson, and well done on surviving the Steve McLaren years. I know it wasn't without its own set of challenges.
Thanks, Martin.
Now, we have contacted Nottinghamshire County Council for comment regarding Richard Tice's comments regarding their ban on Nottingham Live, and we've yet to receive a reply. We'll have more on this story tomorrow. As I said, I'm going to get the editor, Natalie Fay, on the show to give her version of events, because I believe in free speech, I believe in free discourse, and let's have a conversation about where that is going. That's what we do on the People's Channel. There's more still to come between now and 5 o'clock.
Good afternoon, I'm back again with your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the rest of this week, there are signs of something a bit drier by Friday and Saturday, but for the meantime, it's looking still unsettled. There's low pressure nearby. We have another system waiting out towards the west, but even at the moment, there is a feature pushing its way across the southern parts. That's brought some persistent rain earlier on today. There are also plenty of showers around at the moment. For many, those showers are going to clear away, so there will be some dry weather for a time. Before that other system that I highlighted pushes in from the southwest, so across much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland, it is going to turn wet and windy as we go through the early hours of tomorrow. With that then, temperatures not dropping a huge amount for most, though across some parts of Scotland where it stays dry and clear, it could turn a bit fresh. Now, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a wet and windy picture for many. Starting off wet and windy across the southern counties, some heavy, persistent rain here. Also, plenty of wet weather further north across much of England, Wales, Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. The rain here could be heavy at times too, particularly a wet start to the day for many. However, across parts of northern western Scotland, it could actually start the day largely fine. Even some sunshine breaking through, though I think it will turn a bit cloudier, even a bit wetter here as we go through the day. Elsewhere, there will be more persistent rain at times across parts of Scotland, northern England and perhaps Northern Ireland. For the rest of England and Wales, the rain will clear away, but then heavy showers following in behind, albeit with some sunny spells in between. Worth bearing in mind that we will have some strong winds, risk of coastal gales towards the south, and so those winds will take the edge off the temperatures, even though they're around average for the time of year. More unsettled weather to come across northern parts, particularly the northeast as we go through the end of the day, but elsewhere things starting to turn a little bit drier, a little bit calmer, and that takes us into, well, another showery day actually on Thursday, but Friday and Saturday for many will be mostly dry.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Today, travellers are experiencing significant disruptions across several routes. In Scotland, commuters should be aware that the A9 southbound at Inveralmond is restricted due to a broken down vehicle, causing potential delays. In Dorset, a collision has led to the complete closure of the A35 eastbound, likely causing travel interruptions. In Cumbria, a medical emergency on the M6 southbound has resulted in a lane closure, expected to be resolved by evening. And on the trains, expect delays on Avanti West Coast services between Crewe and Stockport, impacting Chiltern Railways operations. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 5. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Conservative Party has today pledged to restart drilling for North Sea oil and gas if it wins the next general election, as Kemi Badenoch seeks to distance herself from the net zero policies of her predecessors. Now, the Conservative leader made the pledge during a speech to offshore executives in Aberdeen this morning, and also promising to make Scottish oil and gas a cornerstone of the British economy. Let's go live now to Aberdeen and speak to the former MP for Aberdeen South, Ross Thompson. Ross, a pleasure to have your company as ever. This must come as something as a surprise to you as a former Conservative MP in the Aberdeen area. You were operating then under the very real constraints of a 75% total windfall tax on North Sea oil under the Conservative regime and net zero requirements by 2030. Suddenly, everything's changed.
Oh, absolutely, Martin, and it's great to be with you today too. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. I think Kemi Badenoch's come to Aberdeen hoping that the people of the North East will be suffering from a collective bout of amnesia, that somehow we will have forgotten the devastating impact of a windfall tax, as you said, a headline rate of 75%, which has killed off investment in the North Sea, discouraged that investment to go elsewhere and cost people their jobs, which was a product of a government that Kemi Badenoch herself served in. It's incredible that when she was standing at the quayside there, that she didn't fall into the water with the weight of her brass neck. People in Aberdeen will not forgive, we will not forget, and no matter what the Conservatives say on this issue, pretending now to care about oil and gas, none of us will trust them again.
And it's worth pointing out, Ross, that you were so disillusioned with the direction of travel of the Conservative Party, you've crossed the floor to reform. Do you think that your decision there was impacted upon by the difference in energy policy between Reform UK and the Conservatives, at least as it was before today?
It was a huge part of my decision. I've represented Aberdeen. I'm born and bred in Aberdeen, and I care very much about the communities here. And I've seen the devastating impact of bad policy decisions, introducing the windfall tax, introducing net zero. This has had a crippling effect on our economy here. About 1,000 jobs a month are being lost. This is mass deindustrialisation. And regardless of what the Tories say now, which we all know is being done out of political desperation ahead of the Holyrood elections next year, the only party credibly standing up for our energy industry and the only party that stands for drill baby drill is Reform UK. They've been consistent in that. It's part of the reason that I joined Reform, because they get it. They want to unleash our energy potential, they want to protect our energy security, and they want to keep the skilled people working in our industry here in Aberdeen rather than working elsewhere in the world.
And Ross, one thing we can agree on with Kemi Badenoch certainly is the sheer value of North Sea oil and gas to the British economy. It could absolutely revolutionise not only Aberdeenshire, not only Scotland, but the entire United Kingdom. If only we had the vision, some might say, to be energy sovereign, to not be dependent on overseas imports, to not be dependent on ridiculous things like importing gas from Norway from the same blooming fields as the North Sea off the coast of Scotland.
That's right, absolutely. That is the Reform vision, that we actually maximise the potential that we've got here. It is absolutely crazy that when we have demand for our own oil and gas here in the UK, rather than produce it ourselves, where we pay, where it pays taxes to the UK Treasury, where it supports the local economy, where it supports local jobs, we're actually offshoring all of that to Norway or to the USA. It's absolutely incredible. And that's why the people in Aberdeen who have suffered at the hands of this windfall tax, because like I said, it has had a really crippling effect on the local economy here. We're seeing skilled people upping sticks and leaving, businesses closing down. We will never forget who was responsible for that. It was convenient for the Conservatives to impose this windfall tax, to impose net zero at the time, despite those of us who were saying it's a very bad idea, don't do it. And now all of a sudden we have to believe they've had this Damascus conversion, that somehow now they are to be trusted to stand up for the jobs that they have cost, to stand up for an industry that they have devastated. Nobody believes it. And when it comes to the Holyrood election next year, well, I don't think there'll be very much left of the Scottish Tories in the northeast of Scotland as a result of all of these bad decisions that they've taken. No one believes them.
Now, Ross Thompson, I have to say, of course, some people would say that it's not the correct thing to do to be drilling for more oil, for more gas. It pollutes and it's not what we should be doing in Britain. What's your response to that?
Look, we have to produce our own oil and gas as part of actually meeting some of our climate objectives, because if we don't do it ourselves, we have to import it. And if we import it, then we're paying a higher carbon footprint on that. If we're coming from the US, some of our imports are coming as far as Qatar. there is a lower carbon footprint if we produce it here in the UK ourselves. And that is actually using businesses and skilled people based in the UK, doing it at that lower carbon footprint. And that's a way that we can do it sustainably. It makes absolutely no sense. In fact, it's utter madness to depend on other countries doing it at a higher carbon intensity and then importing it all the way into the UK when literally it is in our doorstep. It is right there in the North Sea, ready for the taking. Let's drill it.
OK, Ross Thompson, it's great to have you on the show. It's great to see you looking so well. Please come on again soon, my friend. Pleasure, as always. Ross Thompson, you take care. Now for in search of some holiday sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Plenty of September sunshine on offer around the Mediterranean at the moment. There are a few showers in Croatia. They'll clear away. And some wet and windy weather across the far north of Portugal and the northwest of Spain. But most of Spain, the Balearics, dry and sunny. Italy turning sunny as well after some heavy showers earlier in the week. Now the showers across Croatia, they are clearing away, and much of the Greek islands also fine, dry and sunny. And that'll generally continue throughout this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
I thought you'd set up a new version of Pimlico Plumbers in London.
Yeah, my family have set up a company called We Fix London, but we started planning that, 2 years before Labour got in. If we'd known Labour was getting in, we wouldn't have planned it. So obviously we've got to comply with the tax regulations, but anybody with any sense would agree with what I'm saying. The taxes are too high in the UK for wealthy people. Wealthy people can go and work anywhere in the world and be financially a lot better off.
And we had a non-dom regime that was basically stable for 200 years. It's only recently that it's been changed. And we're changing it and making it harder, just as other countries are making it easier. So you can go to Italy and you can negotiate an amount that you will pay. Portugal's been welcoming people. Malta's been welcoming people. All over the world, countries are saying, please come and bring your money. And the UK is saying, we're going to take all your money. We don't want you anymore.
That's right. Look, they're all encouraging sort of UK business people to come there, and it's working. If you become a tax exile in Italy, you pay 200 grand for the year. You don't have to pay no more. But the real problem is we're wasting their money, and they should be encouraging entrepreneurs to be staying. I think our biggest export at the moment is wealthy people.
So you're a businessman. You know how to do things and make a profit. If you're advising the Chancellor on how to get the money the country needs to pay for the public services, what would you be saying? Because at the moment, the tax revenues don't meet our expenditure. There is a gap. Something needs to give.
Resign.
All right, but that's not the answer.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, a charity that banned a child from its summer camp has been referred to the charity watchdog. Over the Wall turned away the 8-year-old boy who has severe disabilities after a heated phone call with the charity's clinical director, in which the parents said that people could not change sex. And the charity have denied the claims and insist it was the mother's aggressive tone and not her views which led to the decision. Let's now speak with the case officer at the Free Speech Union, Celeste Warren. Celeste, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company. An astonishing case. Tell us all about it.
So this is a really strange case of an 8-year-old disabled child who was essentially refused entry to the summer camp because on the application form they asked for his and his mother's pronouns. His mother decided to write seriously in response to these pronouns, which precipitated a call from the charity to the mother. This was heated, during which the mother started to talk about her gender critical views. She expressed the belief that sex is immutable and biological, and the phone call ended abruptly. Straight after this phone call, the charity then contacted the mother saying that they are not allowing her or her son to attend this summer camp. They alleged that this was due to the aggressive nature in which the mother carried out the phone call. However, FSU Scotland was able to help the mother submit a subject access request, which revealed the true reason that the mother was not and her son were not permitted access to this summer camp were because her views, her gender critical views, were not in line with Over the Wall. Now, clearly, this is gender critical discrimination and completely ridiculous. So we wrote, as the FSU, our General Secretary Toby Young wrote to the Charity Commission and the Scottish Charity Commission, pointing out that the charity is actually going against its own charitable objectives by doing this. So Over the Wall's objectives are to promote or assist in the promotion and the relief of suffering for seriously ill children. So by denying this child and his mother access to the summer camp, just because the mother holds gender critical views, is clearly in violation of their charitable objectives. We also have stated that they have failed to act with due care and diligence by not complying with the Equality Act, by discriminating against this mother for her gender critical views. We've also said that clearly the publication of this story is going to cause incredible reputational damage to Over the Wall, all of which is in violation of their charitable objects.
Celeste, it seems astonishing that a disabled child can miss out on something so giving and meaningful as a summer camp because the mother won't use pronouns. It's just incredible.
It really is. It's so disappointing to see a charity like this put ideology essentially above the joy of a child. The purpose of this camp is to allow disabled children to interact with each other, to have these unique experiences. I mean, this is a summer camp that takes place on beautiful grounds. These are acres and acres of natural environment that would really prove a benefit to a lot of these children. And that, yeah, it is ridiculous that they've been denied access because of politics.
Celeste Warren, thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate your time. Thanks you for joining us. Now we have a comment from Over the Wall. It says this: we welcome the Charities Commission's potential investigation. His family was declined a place on a family camp where children are accompanied by parents or siblings. This was not due to his mother's views, but the aggressive nature in which she expressed them. Astonishing. Well, this is GB News. Still to come, we'll be joined by our political correspondent Catherine Forster, who's been speaking exclusively to the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson about Donald Trump. That's next. Don't go anywhere. But first, here's your weather forecast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, the changeable weather is going to continue as we go through today. Yes, most of us will see some bright or sunny breaks, but there will also be some showers, even some longer spells of rain, because low pressure still firmly in control. A mature low to the north of the UK, and then another smaller low pressure system has pushed in from the south, and it's this that's been the driving force for some persistent rain across southern parts through this morning, and there will be some more persistent rain across parts of the southeast as we go through this afternoon. Elsewhere, drier, a mixture of some bright sunny spells, but also a fair few showers, and some of them could be heavy, maybe even thundery. If you catch any of those bright sunny spells, it's not going to feel too bad. Relatively warm actually, with temperatures in the low 20s for some and winds lighter than yesterday. Then as we go through the end of today, while across parts of the southeast still some persistent rain for a little while yet, eventually clearing away towards the east. Otherwise, still a fair few showers continuing, and some of them could be heavy. There could be some thunder, some hail, some lightning mixed in, especially across some parts of Scotland, particularly towards the northwest. This is where we're going to see the heaviest, most frequent showers. Otherwise, as we go through the night, most of the showers are actually going to die out, so it is going to turn largely dry with some clear skies, but only for a short period of time. That's because there's more wet and windy weather pushing in from the southwest as we go through the early hours of tomorrow morning, spreading across much of England, Wales and also Northern Ireland. Under the wet and windy weather, while temperatures won't drop a huge amount, mid-teens for many places, but a fair few degrees fresher than this for some parts of Scotland where we get clearer skies. Tomorrow is then going to be a wet and windy day. Some heavy rain around, though the more persistent rain clearing away from England as we go through into the afternoon, with some hefty showers following in behind. More wet weather though across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, with the persistent rain continuing. Also watch out for the strong winds, and with those, temperatures are really academic. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M73 Junction 2A on slip is closed heading northbound today due to essential roadworks. Drivers should follow the signed diversion route and anticipate lengthier journey times. Further north, there's a traffic incident impacting the northbound M40 access at Junction 1, leading to one lane being closed. Meanwhile, a broken-down vehicle on the M25 clockwise between Junction 31 and Junction 1A is causing delays as one of 4 lanes is blocked. And on the trains, there are disruptions on Chiltern Railways between Dorridge and Birmingham Moor Street. And issues continue in the Grand Central area around Eagles Cliff. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, has claimed this afternoon that no stone will remain unturned and that anybody disgracing public office, then, of course, they should be sent to prison. Does this finally mean that politicians, police officers and social workers could finally be jailed for their part in the rape gangs cover-up? We'll have the story with our man Charlie Peters. Now, it's Keir Starmer's birthday today, but a grim new opinion poll doesn't bring many happy returns for the under 5 p.m. His popularity has slumped to an all-time low. Still, at least Sir Keir can look forward to his birthday buffet. I wonder what's on the menu.
Return of the sausages.
Group of high-powered celebrities and politicians have written an astonishing open letter urging so-called right-wingers to stop linking immigration to sex abuse. On today's show, I'll be joined by a furious women's rights campaigner who says, "I will never be silenced by these bullies." And the British countryside has been labelled as overwhelmingly white and slated for not having enough halal food options in a new report. We're asking, seriously, is the countryside racist? And the Labour Party has got itself into a flap once again about flags. This time, the MP Clive Lewis has blasted far-right groups for their extreme views when hanging St George's flags from lampposts. Today's debate is quite simple. Why do lefties have such a problem with our national flags? Welcome to the show. It's an incredible state of affairs when Charlotte Church, Paloma Faith and Chakrabarti, the Baroness Chakrabarti, who of course headed up Liberty, has written an open letter, Women Against the Far Right, saying stop linking sex crime to immigration. How dare they? How dare they tell people in Britain, British women who are writing to us every single day, appearing on our show every single week, saying they feel unsafe in their towns since mass immigration. They feel unsafe in their towns since asylum seeker hotels were open without them having any say. How dare they say there is no facts to back this up when repeatedly on this channel we've had to force information out of the Ministry of Justice, out of the police service, out of the Home Office to show there is a problem. It can't be swept under the carpet. What happened to the Me Too movement? What happened to I Believe Her? It seems you're not to be believed if you're so-called far right. It's an astonishing assault on British women's safety. I'll be speaking to an expert soon who says that she will not be silenced by these lovies and these lefties. They feel there's a problem and they are allowed to speak out. Get in touch, gbnews.com/Your Say. But now's your headlines. Here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock, well, the government has launched a direct messaging campaign warning foreign students they face removal if they overstay their visas. Around 130,000 international students and their families will be contacted by email or text telling them they must leave the UK if they have no right to remain. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says some are wrongly claiming asylum when nothing has changed in their home countries. A trend, she warns, is putting pressure on asylum accommodation. But refugee charities say many claims are genuine and students may only feel safe to seek protection once they reach the UK. The government's borrowing costs have soared to their highest level since 1998, piling pressure on the Chancellor ahead of her autumn budget. The interest rate on 30-year bonds hit 5.7% today, making it more expensive for Britain to service its debt. The pound also slipped more than 1% against the dollar. Rachel Reeves now faces what analysts call highly difficult choices to stick to her fiscal rules. Labour has ruled out raising income tax, VAT or national insurance, fuelling speculation over property taxes and frozen thresholds instead. Critics say the market sell-off is a warning shot, while Number 10 insists it remains ironclad in its commitment to sound finances. Kemi Badenoch says a Conservative government would make North Sea oil and gas the cornerstone of Britain's economy. And she hit out at Labour for treating the sector as, in her words, a relic of the past. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, though, accused the Tories of peddling the same failed energy policy and warned it would hurt working people, insisting Labour's clean energy sprint will secure jobs of the future. Speaking to industry leaders today, the Conservative leader promised to scrap Labour's block on new licences, rename the North Sea regulator and restore what she calls common sense to energy policy.
It will help people with their energy bills by making sure that we increase supply. 100% of the gas that is taken from the North Sea is used in the UK. And what we're seeing right now with sky-high energy bills is a result of a net zero mandate that is simply not working. And we need both Labour and the SNP to change course. It does matter because we help influence the market. And you look at countries like Norway who are drilling right in this very basin in the North Sea. We need to make sure that we're also able to provide supply. At the moment, European countries are still buying oil and gas from Russia. I think it would be a lot better if they bought it from Aberdeen.
The Green Party has a new leader and he is setting his sights firmly on Labour. Zach Polanski, a London Assembly member and the party's former deputy, won a landslide, more than 20,000 votes to 3,700 for his rivals. In his victory speech, he vowed to build a green left to replace Labour, ruling out coalition with Sir Keir Starmer's party and setting an ambitious target of 30 MPs at the next election. He also branded Reform UK charlatans and pledged to welcome asylum seekers through safe routes, insisting, he says, this country needs immigration. The government is under fire for making almost no progress on its promised inquiry into grooming gangs. The Home Office Minister Jess Phillips told MPs the search for a chair is in its final stages and that victims will help approve the appointment. She insisted the probe will leave no stone unturned and will examine officials accused of covering up abuse. But the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said survivors feel left in the dark and accused ministers of being, quote, dragged kicking and screaming every step of the way. The row over asylum housing in Essex could be heading to the Supreme Court. Epping Forest District Council has asked for permission to appeal after the Court of Appeal overturned its injunction against the Bell Hotel in Epping. The ruling had originally ordered 138 asylum seekers to leave by the 12th of this month, but judges said that decision was seriously flawed in principle. The council's leader argues the site has put an intolerable strain on the community, but ministers say the judgment helps the government to close hotels in what they say is a more planned and orderly way. And Sainsbury's supermarket is rolling out facial recognition technology in a bid, they say, to crack down on shoplifting and abuse in its stores. The UK's second largest supermarket has begun an 8-week trial in London and Bath, working with security firms ahead of a possible nationwide rollout. Bosses say the system will only flag individuals reported for theft or aggression, with other images instantly deleted. But privacy groups have branded the move deeply disproportionate and chilling, warning that an expansion could mean that there is no safety and that they are monitoring customers. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back in half an hour. Next, though, one last look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
8 minutes past 5, and here are how the markets are shaping up. The pound will buy you $1.3371 and €1.1496. The price of gold, £2,603.95 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,152 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, the Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips says police have flagged over 1,200 past cases of grooming abuse for review since January. Now, of those, 216 cases are being fast-tracked as urgent. And that's as she also told MPs that the government is close to launching a national inquiry into rape gangs. Well, here to tell us more now is GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, welcome back to the show. This story, I think, is something we should rightly be getting excited about. So many false starts, Charlie Peters, so many broken promises, so much rhetoric given towards survivors. And yet, Charlie, something which leapt out today, that comment by Jess Phillips. No stone will be left unturned, and even intimating people could be jailed for their part in the cover-up of Britain's shame rape gangs. Charlie, tell us more.
Well, Martin, one Conservative politician told me earlier this year that they thought that the Labour government had gone in so many U-turns on this issue that they were just going around in circles, constantly changing their position on inquiries. First, they said we didn't need any inquiries. We've already had the J inquiry, the independent inquiries, child sexual abuse. Then there were local inquiries, and then there's this national inquiry being launched. But today it was branded as a masterclass in procrastination. That was Esther McVey, the former Conservative minister, speaking in the Commons, to which Jess Phillips says that survivors have told her through tears that they hate it when MPs fight over this issue and use the wrong tone, or perhaps and battle over child sexual exploitation and the issues it raises. But I have to say, Martin, I've spoken to a lot of survivors as well, and they are furious and frustrated about the length of time it has taken to get this inquiry off from political papers and into action. Because it was announced in June, as Sir Keir Starmer was leaving, flying to Canada for a meeting at the G7, that he made this confirmation there would be a national inquiry on the back of Baroness Casey's stance, her rapid audit into this crisis. But so far, we haven't had any concrete information on what is going to happen. The National Police investigation that was also recommended, we've heard about that. It's called Operation Beaconport. As you said in the intro there, Martin, it's looking at lots of closed cases. We also know that the CSE task force, the Grooming Gangs task force, has made over 820 arrests in the last year since Labour came to power. But it's that question of the national inquiry. It doesn't have a chair yet. We know that a survivors panel has been formed. That's what Jess Phillips told us today. But still, people waiting for when that will take off properly. And the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, pressed Jess Phillips on this today, saying if she would confirm that public officials who covered up the abuse would be prosecuted. Here's what she said.
Let me say and be very clear, and it be taken away by everybody who I'm sure has the victim's best interests at heart, that it will cover what it needs to cover to uncover the truth. And no stone will be left unturned. And that will make difficult conversations for people. And if people are found by our court system to have undermined and had, disgrace in public office, then of course they should be sent to prison. However, that has never happened to date in these cases. And so, of course, I very much hope that we uncover the kind of social workers that he referred to, and I hope that they face the full force of everything that they deserve.
Well, a lawyer who represents many of the victims of these abuse networks told me after Jess Phillips's announcement and that statement there saying that it would leave no stone unturned, they've heard this many times before. There have been all sorts of promises, and there's plenty of information, Martin, already out there about failures by public officials, and yet more is coming forward. We revealed in April the account of John Picos, a former Greater Manchester police officer. He had gone to work in Bradford for a charity tracking the efforts of child traffickers and abuse networks focusing on children's homes there. And when he brought his evidence to the social services and the police, he says he was threatened with arrest by a senior police officer in Bradford. The city just 4 years earlier had, of course, experienced serious rioting in 2001. A report commissioned by the government said that West Yorkshire Police was prioritising what it describes as community cohesion, racial cohesion over justice, and that many Asian gangs, to use this report's language, felt they were above the law. And John Picos told me that that is what he experienced when he was looking at these abuse gangs later in that decade, that people were looking the other way and threatening him with arrest rather than the gangs he was exposing with all the intelligence he had gathered through his small team funded by a charity. Now, with that information, when we approached Bradford Social Services, the council and the police about it, the police said they hadn't received any reports or any information in their archive from John Picos, and the council wouldn't give us a statement at all. They maintained their silence on the story. And there are calls, of course, for Bradford to be involved in that national grooming gangs inquiry. Who knows what further testimony and evidence might come forward with brave people like John Peacocke making those sorts of allegations and that sort of brave testimony. But Martin, as I was saying before, we have heard this time and time again from politicians that people who failed will be held to account and that groomers and abusers will be held to justice as well. But for a lot of those survivors and those who fight alongside them, such as their lawyers, they are still waiting for evidence of that happening. And Esther McVey has said that this is a masterclass in procrastination. Still waiting for a chair of this inquiry, still waiting for terms of reference, still waiting for action.
Charlie Pease, it's quite the change of position, isn't it? From having to be dragged kicking and screaming into this full inquiry, now suddenly saying people could go to jail for their part in undermining the disgrace of these rape gangs. Charlie Peters, we can live in hope that they hold their word this time, and people should be living in fear of getting a knock on the door in the cold of night. Police officers, parliamentarians, social workers, anybody involved in this national scandal should rightly go to jail. Charlie Peters, we can only hope that happens. So thank you, as ever, for your work in making sure this story never gets swept under the carpet. Charlie Peters, superb as ever. Now, degenerative native men are the biggest threats to women in Britain, and that's according to the Labour MP, Kat Eccles. Now, her comments come as she and other prominent left-wing women tell the right wing to stop linking immigration to sexual abuse. But according to a report by the Centre for Migration Control, sex crimes by foreign nationals have skyrocketed. Well, let's now speak with the political commentator, Paul Connew. Paul, welcome to the show. Let me ask you a simple question. Why is it that when sex crimes seem to be committed by immigrants, by asylum seekers, perhaps, we know that that's happening, a lot of political commentators on the left seem to say, oh, no, don't do that. You're inflaming community tensions. Now, an MP for the Labour Party, Kat Eccles, is wading in. We just had Charlie Peters on the previous item there saying this is precisely the kind of rot that caused people to look the other way for decades around the rape gangs. Why can't we just be colourblind and say where crimes are committed, they're committed, and women deserve to be kept safe and stop apologising for it?
Well, I'm a left-wing commentator, but I'm somebody who recognises this problem. I don't know Kat Eccles, but I think her language, degenerative native men, was unwise, to put it mildly. But there's also, from the right, there's also similar over-the-top invective. Look, there is a problem. We have to recognise this, and some of us have been arguing this from the left, as I have, in any case. And I'm somebody who in columns and on air argued a long time ago that there was a need for a national inquiry into what happened with the grooming gangs. And the government have been very slow on this one and should have acted faster. But let's not forget that previous reports and recommendations, when the Tories were in power, they failed to act on the recommendations that were made in earlier investigations. So this is not an exclusively Labour government problem. It's a failure where the police and local authorities were afraid to use the law, properly, and where there were factors about alleged social cohesion, which rather overrode, in fact, the question of justice, and that was an appalling situation. And let's hope, without any guarantees, that this national inquiry does get to the bottom of this and that people do end up in jail. But look, I'm the editor who was legally thwarted from exposing Jimmy Savile in his lifetime, and this goes a long way back, where the BBC and the police failed in that case. And the one point where Kat Eccles, who say I don't know, does have a point, is that the majority of paedophile offences in this country are still committed by white British citizens.
Well, that's because we're a white country.
That doesn't negate the problem.
It's an obvious thing to say.
Migrant sex crime.
The majority of rapes committed in Nigeria are committed by black people. We're a majority white nation. It's an obvious thing to say. It's missing the key point, though. Proportionality per capita There are 87 nations more likely to commit sex offences in Britain than Brits. So what she's trying to do is a classic deflection.
Well, Martin, let's be careful here, because I know you had Robert Bates on from the Centre for Migration Control earlier. Well, they don't have an impeccable record on data collection and data interpretation.
Here we go. Shooting the messenger, avoiding the message. Paul.
This needs to be argued out and examined forensically and calmly, not with raging, rants from the left or the right. Actually, this needs to be handled with a degree of sensitivity rather with hysteria, and I think that is a danger.
But the facts aren't hysterical. The Centre for Migration Control got their facts because the facts aren't published by the Home Office. They should be. I think you and I both agree as journalists we'd like to see the full facts, but they don't allow that in case it stirs up what they might call division. We need the truth.
Yes,
and the truth is, whether you like it or not, whether Kat Eccles likes it or not, proportionately there are nations imported into Britain more likely to be sex offenders. That's a fact.
But the data is open to question. I'm not disputing that there is a disturbing level of sex crimes being committed by migrants, and asylum seekers. But I think Robert Bates does actually. There's open to question about how he is interpreting the figures. So I think I want to see a more forensic examination of those stats, because they...
OK, I mean, I've got to move on to my next guest, but to be absolutely clear, Rob Bates looked at the sexual convictions for crimes of nationalities, tabulated them with the census data and looked at the nationality list and produced what is the best workaround you can get in the absence of general data. It's true. So you can question the validity of it. I would say, give us the truth, the Home Office, the Ministry of Justice, but we haven't got that. In the meantime, we have to do the best we can to work around. But Paul Connew, I'm being told we have to move on. It's great to have you on the show, and we'll get you back on another time. But for more reaction to this, I'm now joined by the chair of the Women's Policy Centre, Paola Diana. Paola, welcome to the show. I wanted to get you on to get your response today to what I think is a breathtakingly arrogant letter from a group of women called Women Against the Far Right. And this is Paloma Faith, the millionaire singer, Charlotte Church, the voice of an angel, Zara Sultan, of course, the other half of the Corbyn movement, Diane Abbott and Shami Chakrabarti, Baroness Chakrabarti, former director of Liberty, saying people like you, stop talking about sex offences by immigrants, you're being far right, you're being racist.
It's appalling, this letter. And I'm ashamed by these women. Who do they think they are to patronize us? The British people are now opening their eyes and they see what is the truth, that culture matters, religion matters. So these countries where these men, the majority of them comes from, are countries highly misogynistic, where women are treated worse than beasts, like in Afghanistan. Do you think these countries have the buildings that are misogynist? No, of course not. It's their men. So if we import a critical mass of men who were grown up in these cultures, of course they will bring their culture with them. And we saw this and we still see it with the rape gangs scandal. Many of these men think it's normal, this is what they say, to rape minors. And this is what the culture we want in this country. You know what, Martin? Even one rape committed by this man is too much. And what you said before is absolutely true, is the proportionality you have to look into, not the numbers, the pure numbers. So proportionally, these men are a minority in this country so far, but they're committing a very high level of crimes, sexual crimes. So this is too much. We need our politicians to finally see the truth and help the British people to have a decent life and protect children and women. This is what we want from our policymakers. And stop with this labeling everyone far right. What is the far right? Everyone who is not agreeing with the woke, far radical left. We are tired of this.
Paola Diana, can I quickly ask you, whatever happened to the Me Too movement? Whatever happened to I Believe Her? It seems when the sex offences are committed by certain peoples, they'd rather we turn a blind eye. Why?
You're right, Martin. It's two measures, because if someone is on their side and is white, then he's a monster. If it's a non-white man, suddenly we can't tell anything against this man. But this is not correct. This is not the way also to help these communities, and it's not the way to help the women in those communities, who are actually twice the victims of white women. We need to face misogyny. We need to face rapes and sexual harassment for what they are. And again, look at the scandal. We didn't do anything for 30 years against the gang rape, the rape gangs, because it was in the name of diversity. Diversity is a new ideology of the radical left, and is destroying our culture. If we don't do anything now, it will be too late.
OK, Paola Diana, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. That's the chair of the Women's Policy Centre. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. Now, a government spokesman has told GB News this. This government has already removed almost 5,200 foreign national offenders in its first year in office. That's a 14% increase on the previous 12 months. And we will continue to crack down on any foreign nationals who come to this country and break our rules. And GB News has also approached the Labour Party for comment. Now, next, I'll be joined by political correspondent Catherine Forster, who's been speaking to the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson about Donald Trump. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:28 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Boris Johnson has questioned the US President Donald Trump over Ukraine in a GB News exclusive. The former Prime Minister said watching Putin welcome the US was sick-making and called the US administration's tactics infuriating. Let's cross live now to GBNews' political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, you sat down with Boris Johnson in a GBNews exclusive. Over to you. What did he tell us?
Yes, well, welcome to Edinburgh. Boris Johnson is up here speaking just a little bit later. But yes, we were talking about Russia and Ukraine. I was really struck by his sort of implicit criticism, really, of the Trump administration. He talked about the sort of moral equivalence that the White House made between Russia and Ukraine when he says it's very obvious who the good guys and who the bad guys are. Also, I thought it was very interesting on Rwanda and what's gone wrong with migration and the small boats, and a different world in which he was still Prime Minister. Let's have a look at what he had to say. Boris Johnson, you have been unwavering in your support of Ukraine and your condemnation of Putin from the beginning. But President Trump, well, he's been frankly the opposite. It's not even clear what side he's on some of the time. What would you like to see now to stop the fighting? Is it going to take Trump giving Putin a punishment beating? He keeps threatening.
Well, I think the first thing to say is, and first of all, great to be back with you, great to be back on GB News. But the first thing to say about the Ukrainians is that they remain absolutely heroic. After more than 3 years of war, they are still unbeaten. Putin still holds less than 20% of their country. He still can't capture those bits of the east, you know, Pokrovsk, all that bit around there that everybody said he was going to get about a year ago. He's making glacial progress.
But he's demanding bits that he hasn't even got yet.
He's being reversed. And whatever people say about Trump, and I understand people's frustration about the kind of moral equivalence that's drawn between Russia and Ukraine by the White House. It's infuriating to hear this kind of thing. We know who's in the right. It's black and white. It's good versus evil. Ukraine is a completely innocent, wronged party. We all know that. It was, you know, frankly, emetic to watch, of sick-making, to watch Putin being welcomed to America like that. You know, we all know that. But Trump, to be fair to him, has actually continued to let the flow of weapons go to Ukraine, which is the most important thing. He has actually toughened sanctions on those who use Russian hydrocarbons, and, you know, putting big tariffs on the Indians, who are big buyers of Putin's oil and gas. That's something very, very serious. It's something that has driven the Indians to try and source their oil and gas from elsewhere. And it's something that we, in the UK, whatever our posturing, have not yet done ourselves.
Sure is.
And so, look, what I think needs to happen now is that, yes, you said punishment beating. I think that's right. I think what is needed now is for Donald Trump to follow his instincts, really toughen up on economic sanctions, and I think that Putin is in a much, much weaker position than people say. I mean, Russia is getting really mauled on its hydrocarbon production by Ukraine. I think the problems they've got in the refineries are very serious. You're seeing a 10% reduction in Russia's output of gasoline. You're seeing shortages of fuel. Inflation is going up. And as I say, couple that with failure on the battlefield, Putin's position, and what I would say to the President Trump, and sometimes I do communicate this, what I would say is, look, Putin's position is much, much weaker than people think. And I think probably weaker than Putin's advisors are telling him. Okay. And I think if Donald Trump applies the pressure that he can, and he's then backed up by Britain and Europe, I think that there can be a real change here, and I think this war could be over by the end of the year.
You mentioned Britain. When we last met in Munich, you were saying how Trump was right, that Europe needed to step up and pay up. We are doing that now, aren't we? We've got this coalition of the willing meeting in Paris on Thursday. How happy or otherwise are you from what Europe is doing now, and how do you feel about potentially us putting British troops on the ground in Ukraine. Is that something that you are comfortable with?
Yes, I am, but only in the context, clearly, of a victory for Ukraine and a secure Ukraine, because that's what you need, or a peace that can be properly managed. Look, be in no doubt, the most effective guarantors of Ukrainian freedom are going to be the Ukrainian armed forces. They are heroes. They have shown that they have the capacity to defend their country. What we need to do is to continue to give them the equipment. And sure, in the context of a peace, then yes, the UK and other countries can backfill and provide training and reassurance. And by the way, another thing that Donald Trump has said is that he is willing, and he's going further here than Biden ever did, Joe Biden ever did. Trump is saying that he is willing to back that peacekeeping force up with intelligence, with logistics, even with air power. That's a massive thing for the US to commit to.
That is some progress, isn't it? It took months to get to that position. But also on security, part of our security is border security. We don't seem to have much of that at the moment. We saw what the small boats crisis and migration more broadly, part of that's down to you, did to the Tories. But Labour don't seem to be able to get a handle on it either. What do you think is needed? Nigel Farage is talking about mass deportations, pulling out of the ECHR.
Well, I mean,
do we need to go that far?
Just speaking as the Prime Minister who brought migration in the first full year of my premiership down to its lowest level for 40 years.
Then it went up
for 40 years.
Then it went up to 1 million, and they call it the Boris wave.
And what you had then, of course, was the post-COVID. You had lots of EU students coming back. You had the Ukrainians. You had, and that was quite right. But what I also did was take back control of our borders. So I took back legal control of everybody coming in legally. The problem by leaving the EU, and if you remember, there were various models of Brexit on offer, and the one that my immediate predecessor was offering was basically remaining in the single market. That was no good because we didn't get back control of our borders. We got back full legal control, and we had a plan, which I think I announced only a couple of months before, tragically, I had to leave office in April 22 or thereabouts, with the Rwanda plan. And actually, it is the right plan. It is, and what's so infuriating is to watch a brilliant British idea, which is what the Rwanda plan was, now being taken up by other countries. And
America, for example.
Yeah, America. And have you, I don't know, did you come on the Rwanda trip?
No.
You should. It was amazing. I mean, people became. So we had all these sort of quite tough egg lefty journalists, the BBC and so on. And we showed them the accommodation that people were going to have in Rwanda under the plan, and they melted. They could see that it made sense, and what it would have meant is you arrive in one of these dinghies from Calais, whatever, from the French beaches. And immediately, no lawyers, you're processed in Rwanda.
But the trouble was, the Tories called the election before you could get the people on those flights, so we'll never know. Well, Rishi Sunak called the election.
I didn't call the election. I would have won the election.
But now Nigel Farage has grabbed the microphone. Do you think Kemi Badenoch is going to be able to get a hearing?
They were on 0%. Those guys were on 0%.
I know, but they're on over 30 now.
I know. Look, we are. I think seriously, what the government should do, what Yvette Cooper should do, is swallow a lot of pride and implement the Rwanda plan. That's what they need to do. Something they should go back to Kigali. They should say, look, we've goofed, we've made a big mistake, and
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
We've spent a huge amount of money already on the deal.
700 million. But it's not going to happen. Do you think...
Well, why not?
Will we have to... Well, because they're not going to do it now.
They've done plenty of other U-turns. They did a U-turn on the winter fuel payment.
But do you think it will be necessary to pull out ultimately of the ECHR, the Refugee Convention, all of these international agreements? Will we have to go that far? Because the public are listening to Nigel Farage. He's making all sorts of promises. Are the Conservatives going to be able to come back from this, do you think?
Of course. I mean, look, there's no single thing you can... Leaving the ECHR on its own doesn't fix this, right? I think it does help in a lot of cases, and I've come round to it. Definitely. But it's the Rwanda plan. It's the thought that you're sitting in Calais and you're thinking, what's going to happen to me when I arrive in Kent? Am I going to get immediately taken to a hotel? Am I going to get... Are UK lawyers immediately going to hand me their cards saying, you've got a problem, bring me up? Or am I going to find myself immediately flown to an East African, Central African country? And I think it would be... That's what we need to do. And actually, Chris Philp, the Conservative Shadow Home Secretary, has, I think, done a very, very good job. Chris has done a very good job of holding the government to account on this and reminding them of their failure on Rwanda. I mean, Starmer was sympathetic. As soon as he actually went to Albania. Do you remember that thing when he went to Albania to try and do a Rwanda-style deal with Eddie Rama? And Eddie Rama told him to bog off, basically. Okay. You know, so that's what we need to do.
Well, yes, let's see what happens. Something clearly needs to change. But just finally, you caused a sort of social media sensation last week where your wife put these gorgeous pictures online of you looking very tan, bearded. There seemed to be rather less of you. Yeah. What's your sort of summer secret?
No, so I've been doing a lot of swimming. It wasn't the fat jab. I can tell you that.
You tried that before. I
did try it before, and it was basically a lot of swimming and trying to eat a bit less. But I promise you, I put it back on so fast. It's terrifying. So I do think the fat jab has great potential. I really do. I think it's. But what about the fat pill? That's what I want. When are they going to make it into a pill? That's
Boris Johnson, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on GB News. Thank you. Couple of things from that interview that I think were really interesting. First of all, he is clearly frustrated by the moral equivalence that he says that the White House makes between Russia and Ukraine, when he says it's very clear who the good guys and the bad guys are. People are very, very careful not to criticise President Trump. So I thought that was interesting, particularly as he says that he is still in touch with the president and that he tells President Trump that Putin's hand is actually not that strong. And he still hopes, in fact, that the war could end this year if, and it's a big if, of course, Donald Trump follows through and really punishes Putin like he keeps threatening to do, but isn't really doing at all beyond putting sanctions on India. And the other thing was on the issue of the small boats. He didn't want to talk about Nigel Farage. He didn't want to talk about Kemi Badenoch. He didn't want to talk about the current government. What he wanted to talk about was what he had done, what he had tried to do. I mentioned the Boris wave when he said that he'd brought net migration down in his first year to the lowest it had been for 40 years. It then went up, of course, didn't it, to nearly 1 million. And he said, yes, but we got that down. But also, he's convinced that Rwanda was the answer, still is the answer. He says Yvette Cooper should swallow her pride and bring it back. I don't think there's much chance of that. But also when I pointed out that, the election was called before those flights ever got off the ground, I thought it was really interesting. He said, well, I didn't call the election. And then he then went on to say, I would have won the election. So it seems to me that Boris Johnson still very clearly feels that he was terribly wronged by the Conservative Party. He feels still that it was a very big mistake to get rid of him, and there is a parallel universe in which that didn't happen. Boris Johnson, he believes, would have won the election, and who knows where we would be with things now. Of course, we will never know.
Yeah, Catherine Forster, I think some of that fell into the recollections may vary camp. I mean, you're absolutely right to point out that the Boris wave had over 1 million immigration, and taking credit for immigration going down simply is ahistorical. But He's saying there that Yvette Cooper should adopt the Rwanda policy. There's more likelihood of me flapping my arms and getting to the moon, Catherine Forster, than that happening. And the Labour Party, in their defence, they're trying their best, right? Tell us about what they say they're doing.
Well, they are. They're pulling lots of levers. They've been doing it really since they came in. I was on so many trips with the Prime Minister to Rome to talk to Giorgia Meloni, a deal with Germany, a deal with France, another deal with France. Now we've got the announcement of suspending, bringing family across if you get your asylum claim granted. They're putting a pause on that. They're cracking down on students that come over on visas that may then decide to try to stay. They are doing lots and lots of things, but the problem is that the numbers are growing. They're up nearly 50% on this time last year, and the anger over asylum hotels is really just, people have just had enough. It's been going on. It was supposed to be a short-term solution, and all the government can say now is they want to end it by the end of the next parliament, but it does feel that people's patience really has run out. So Sir Keir Starmer coming back, they're trying to have a reset, but will it work? I wouldn't hold your breath.
Catherine Forster, thanks for joining us there from Edinburgh, doing your very best to pin down the ever-mercurial Boris Johnson. Catherine Forster, superb, thank you. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Plenty of September sunshine on offer around the Mediterranean at the moment. There are a few showers in Croatia. They'll clear away. And some wet and windy weather across the far north of Portugal and the northwest of Spain. But most of Spain, the Balearics dry and sunny. Italy turning sunny as well after some heavy showers earlier in the week. Now the showers across Croatia, they are clearing away, and much of the Greek islands also fine, dry and sunny. And that'll generally continue throughout this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is like a death.
You could say, oh, what if, but it's gone.
The whole of the community is so sad, and they're slowly getting angry now.
We're going to fight every corner we can to get justice for what's happened here.
2 years ago, a community was in grief. Today, they're more determined than ever. When the Crooked House was gutted by a suspected arson attack and then illegally demolished, the people of the Black Country felt like it was a blitz on their history. Originally built in the 18th century, the pub suffered subsidence because of mining in the area, giving its unique appearance that visitors fell in love with. In February last year, South Staffordshire Council served an enforcement order on the owners ATE Farms, ordering them to rebuild the pub within 3 years. After appealing the order and a subsequent decision from the High Court, the planning enforcement inquiry will have to wait until any potential criminal proceedings have concluded. Investigations by the police are ongoing. For the campaigners who want to see this landmark rebuilt, the passion is only stronger, as Paul Turner from Save the Crooked House explains.
Well, we all felt it was ours. You know, we're Black Country people. We felt that, you know, this is our area, this is our iconic pub. This is so people come from miles around and from all over the world. All of a sudden, just like that, it's gone. We were always very proud of it. Although it's had different owners over the years, it was always ours as a community. Got a lot to think about if the Crooked House is ever going to be built. There's lots of legal issues. The site isn't ours. We can't rebuild the Crooked House, so it's very, very complicated legally. But we know what our end goal is, and how we actually get to that end goal is going to be a little bit complicated. But we're still focusing on that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:49. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, degenerative native men are the biggest threat to women in Britain. Well, that's according to Labour MP Kat Eccles. Her comments come as she and other prominent left-wing women tell the right-wingers, the so-called right-wingers, to stop linking immigration to sexual abuse. But according to a report by the Centre for Migration Control, sex crimes by foreign nationals have skyrocketed. Well, earlier on, I spoke to Paul Connew.
Pat Eccles, who say I don't know, does have a point, is that the majority of paedophile offences in this country are still committed by white British citizens.
Classic deflection. Of course, the majority is committed by white people. We're just about still a white majority nation. The majority of sex crimes in Nigeria are committed by black people. Now, a government spokesperson says this government has already removed almost 5,200 foreign national offenders in its first year in office, a 14% increase on the previous 12 months. And we will continue to crack down on any foreign nationals who come to this country and break our rules. Now, GB News has also approached the Labour Party for comment. Now, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, says that police have flagged over 1,200 past cases on grooming abuse for review since January. And of those, 216 cases are being fast-tracked as urgent. And that's as she also told MPs the government is close to launching at last a national inquiry into abuse gangs. Now, earlier, Jess Phillips spoke in the Commons and said this.
Let me say and be very clear, and it be taken away by everybody who I'm sure has the victim's best interests at heart, that it will cover what it needs to cover to uncover the truth. And no stone will be left unturned. And that will make difficult conversations for people. And if people are found by our court system to have undermined and had, disgrace in public office, then of course they should be sent to prison. However, that has never happened to date in these cases. And so, of course, I very much hope that we uncover the kind of social workers that he referred to, and I hope that they face the full force of everything that they deserve.
I'm now joined in the studio by the Conservative MP and the Opposition Assistant Whip, Katie Lamb. Katie Lamb, welcome to the studio. What a change of position. Jess Phillips there going from avoiding anything to do with the rape gang inquiry now to saying, Chris Phillips forced her into saying people could be jailed for it.
Absolutely. It was remarkable, actually, to be in the chamber today and certain things that she said. At one point, she referred to predominantly Pakistani grooming gangs. We've never heard her use that kind of language before. And I think the truth is out there now, and the government is very late getting on board with it. But it was fantastic to hear her say that perhaps we hope for the first time people who've been part of this cover-up will be prosecuted and will be sent to prison, which is where they belong.
And this should go as high up the food chain as we need and as far back in time as we need.
Absolutely. Whether it's local officials, whether it's social workers, whether it is local elected politicians, everybody who has been part of covering up what happened to those girls, and in some cases boys, belongs in jail.
What do you think's forced this sudden U-turn?
I think it became too embarrassing for the government to pretend that something that we can all see is real wasn't really happening. And they tried various different things, and lots of people have, fudges on the data and making it sound like it wasn't really a problem. And in the end, having talked about this a lot on our side, Chris Phillips talked about this a lot, Kemi Badenoch's talked about this a lot, I've talked about this in Parliament, and what Louise Casey wrote in her audit earlier this year, I think it's just become impossible for them to continue to pretend that things aren't as they are.
Katie Lamb, thank you for joining us for Short But Short Blast. Please come back again. Now up next is the Queen of Primetime Debates, Michelle Jury. What's on your menu?
Hello, Martin. Great show as always. Well, we've got a lot that we want to get stuck into tonight. That absolutely ridiculous letter that's been published and, of course, signed by a load of celebrities, telling right-wing people basically to pack it in, linking foreign citizens and refugees to sex crimes on women and girls. I don't think so, but let's take a look at that. And also, can we stop being driven off a financial cliff edge, please? Is that too much to ask?
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, I'm back again with your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the rest of this week, there are signs of something a bit drier by Friday and Saturday, but for the meantime, it's looking still unsettled. There's low pressure nearby. We have another system waiting out towards the west, but even at the moment, there is a feature pushing its way across the southern parts. That's brought some persistent rain earlier on today. There are also plenty of showers around at the moment. For many, those showers are going to clear away, so there will be some dry weather for a time. Before that, other system that I highlighted pushes in from the southwest, so across much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland. It is going to turn wet and windy as we go through the early hours of tomorrow. With that then, temperatures not dropping a huge amount for most, though across some parts of Scotland where it stays dry and clear, it could turn a bit fresh. Now, as we go through tomorrow, it is going to be a wet and windy picture for many. Starting off wet and windy across the southern counties, some heavy, persistent rain here. Also, plenty of wet weather further north across much of England, Wales, Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. The rain here could be heavy at times too, particularly a wet start to the day for many. However, across parts of northern western Scotland, it could actually start the day largely fine. Even some sunshine breaking through, though I think it will turn a bit cloudier, even a bit wetter here as we go through the day. Elsewhere, there will be more persistent rain at times across parts of Scotland, northern England and perhaps Northern Ireland. For the rest of England and Wales, the rain will clear away, but then heavy showers following in behind, albeit with some sunny spells in between. Worth bearing in mind that we will have some strong winds, risk of coastal gales towards the south, and so those winds will take the edge off the temperatures, even though they're around average for the time of year. More unsettled weather to come across northern parts, particularly the northeast as we go through the end of the day, but elsewhere things starting to turn a little bit drier, a little bit calmer, and that takes us into, well, another showery day actually on Thursday, but Friday and Saturday for many will be mostly dry.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A92 southbound at Chapel Junction has a partially blocked on-slip due to a broken down vehicle, causing delays. The M4 westbound between junctions 5 and 6 has one closed lane following an incident. In Birmingham, the M6 northbound between junctions 5 and 7 is experiencing a 30-minute delay. In Kent, congestion on the A282 anti-clockwise entry slip from the A206 results in a 10-minute delay. And on the trains, Chiltern Railway's disruptions are affecting services between Dorridge and Birmingham Moor Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co. Coming up tonight, sky-high borrowing costs, rising inflation, a sliding pound, and other concerning signs. Let me ask you, are we being catastrophically driven off a financial cliff edge? And Stand Up to Racism have published an open letter, signed, of course, by celebrities, basically telling right-wingers to stop linking sex attacks to migrants. So tell me, do they have a point or not? Also, we need to talk about tasers in prisons. You will not believe the latest on this one. Last but not least, do you remember this?
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time.
Free speech for a very, very long time, and for a very long time to come. Well, what on earth are apparently 5 armed police officers doing arresting the comedian Graham Linehan then? Well, we've got all of that and lots more keeping me company. My panel tonight, so I've got Alex Dean, the political consultant, and Baroness Diane Hayter, new face of the programme, Labour peer. But before we get stuck in, let's give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. The government has launched a direct messaging campaign warning foreign students they face removal if they overstay their visas. Around 130,000 international students and their families will be contacted by text and email, telling them they must leave the UK if they have no right to remain. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says some are wrongly claiming asylum when nothing has changed in their home countries, a trend she warns is putting pressure on asylum accommodation. But refugee charities say many claims are genuine and students may only feel safe to seek protection once they reach the UK. The government's borrowing costs have soared to their highest level since 1998, piling yet more pressure on the Chancellor ahead of her autumn budget. The interest rate on 30-year bonds hit 5.7% today, making it more expensive for Britain to service its debt. The pound also slipped more than 1% against the dollar. Rachel Reeves now faces what analysts call highly difficult choices to stick to her fiscal rules. Labour has, though, ruled out raising income tax, VAT or national insurance, fuelling speculation over property taxes and frozen thresholds instead. Critics say the market sell-off is a warning shot, while Number 10 insists it remains ironclad in its commitment to sound finances. Kemi Badenoch says a Conservative government would make North Sea oil and gas the cornerstone of Britain's economy and hit out at Labour for treating the sector as, in her words, a relic of the past. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband accused the Conservatives, though, of peddling the same failed energy policy and warned it would hurt working people, insisting Labour's clean energy sprint will secure jobs of the future. But speaking today to industry leaders, the Tory leader promised to scrap Labour's block on new licences, to rename the North Sea regulator and restore what she calls common sense to energy policy.
It will help people with their energy bills by making sure that we increase supply. 100% of the gas that is taken from the North Sea is used in the UK. And what we're seeing right now with sky-high energy bills is a result of a net zero mandate that is simply not working. And we need both Labour and the SNP to change course. It does matter because we help influence the market. And you look at countries like Norway, who are drilling right in this very basin in the North Sea. we need to make sure that we're also able to provide supply. At the moment, European countries are still buying oil and gas from Russia. I think it would be a lot better if they bought it from Aberdeen.
In other news tonight, Boris Johnson says the war in Ukraine could be over by the end of the year. That's if Donald Trump toughens sanctions on Moscow. The former Prime Minister told GB News that Putin's position is, he says, much weaker than people think, as Russia faces fuel shortages, raising inflation and failures on the battlefield. Mr Johnson also said he'd back British troops on the ground in Ukraine, but only if the context of a secure peace settlement is in place.
They remain absolutely heroic. After more than 3 years of war, they are still unbeaten. Putin still holds less than 20% of their country. He still can't capture those bits of the east, you know, Pokrovsk, all that bit around there that everybody said he was going to get about a year ago. He's making glacial progress.
The government is under fire for making almost no progress on its promised inquiry into grooming gangs. Home Office Minister Jess Phillips told MPs today the search for a chair is in its final stages, and victims will help approve the appointment. She insisted the probe will leave no stone unturned and will examine officials accused of covering up abuse. But Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said that survivors feel left in the dark and accused ministers of being, quote, dragged kicking and screaming every step of the way. And Sainsbury's is rolling out facial recognition technology in a bid to crack down on shoplifting and abuse in its stores. The UK's second largest supermarket has begun an 8-week trial in London and Bath, working with a security firm ahead of a possible nationwide rollout. Bosses say the system will only flag individuals reported for theft or aggression, with any other images instantly deleted. But privacy groups have branded the move deeply disproportionate and chilling, warning of an Orwellian expansion of surveillance. Sainsbury's, though, insists it's about safety, not monitoring customers. You're up to date just after 6 o'clock. I'll be back with you in an hour for the news at 7. Now, though, it's over to Michelle.
Thank you very much for that, and hello, good evening to each and every one of you at home. I hope you're well tonight. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dubes & Co till 7. Alongside me, I've got my panel. Alex Dean, the political consultant and the best pint drinker I've ever seen in all my life.
You're going to give me one today? I'll prove it.
I cannot lie, he really is. I know that. I keep missing you on a Friday.
You should turn up on a Friday. I'm here.
Or I should introduce Dewberry Tavern.
Every time I'm on, I agree.
Every single day of the week, just on the off chance that you might be on.
I accept.
That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Dewberry Tavern, 5 days a week, yes. Anyway, look, alongside Alex, I've got a new face to the panel. We like There's Baroness Diane Hayter, the Labour peer, and former Deputy Leader of the House of Lords. You're very welcome tonight.
Thank you very much.
Of course, each and every single one of you, you're always very welcome. You can join the conversation in all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Some of you got in touch yesterday and said that you couldn't message me on there, but try again tonight. And of course, you can tweet or you can X me. There is a lot we need to discuss. So without further ado, let's talk about the absolute state of the finances in this country, shall we? I mean, you can choose so many different metrics now. Pick any one that you like, but when you look at things like long-term borrowing costs, they are now their highest level in 27 years. And honestly, I could almost fill the next 10 minutes just listing all of these metrics. The cost of our borrowing now, Diane, is going sky high. You've got the pound, that started to slide. You've got gold, that is starting to hit new levels. You've got all kind of uncertainty and concern now. Are we being driven off an economic cliff edge, do you think? Has Rachel lost control?
No, she hasn't. I think, though, the world, I mean, many of the things you just described, of course, affect other economies as well. And we are part of a global uncertainty at the moment. We've got President Trump introducing tariffs, which are destabilising a lot of trade routes. We've got across the world, not everyone's paid back all the borrowing they did during COVID. We've got particular problems in Europe, although in America, of helping to pay for the Ukraine war. We've got energy prices gone up because of the Ukraine war. These aren't just GB, if I can put it that way here. These aren't just GB problems. It is a very difficult time that Labour took over. You know, there was uncosted, I'm not blaming it all on that, on uncosted spending things. But I think a bigger issue is actually and it isn't just a British issue. We now have an electorate that wants more and more spending on its housing, on public services, on the health service, on education, on everything that is good, but actually an unwillingness to pay tax. And I think there's a fundamental problem there that we in the Western society have yet to face up to.
Oh, I'm itching to respond. I've got a lot to say in response, but I can also see you shaking your head, Alex Dean, to some of that.
Well, not all of it, because it is true to say there are global headwinds that our country faces like everybody else. But there are specific problems happening in the UK, and they are, I'm afraid, at the door of this government. Because what's happened this week is the rate being paid on gilts has gone up, the yield has gone up, and at the same time the pound has gone down. What normally happens if gilt yields go up is that your currency strengthens. Because it's more attractive. Now, those two things happening at once is an indication of a lack of confidence in the UK's economic management. And if that were unclear, we've seen commentators across the board saying that the Prime Minister's shuffling of his advisory team suggests that people don't know who's in charge. Deutsche Bank, Saxe Markets, Franklin Templeton, these are people who invest significantly in the UK, all on record today saying we've got queries about who's in charge on the fiscal side. If the rates keep going up, it's going to be worse. There's little or no economic credibility left. And I would make the point that we're now at 5.7% on 30-year yields, which is worse than we've had since '98. But they're going to keep going, I think. The projection is that we'll go through 6% or worse by the end of the year. And if you start going through that, and we're spending £125 billion on debt servicing, absolutely extraordinary, they are bankrupting our country. Point to make, because people will make the comparison with Liz Truss, is that it was bad with Liz Truss. But it was specific, right? Liability-driven investments and the problem that you had around them was not foreseen by the Conservative government when they announced the raft of changes they wanted. But you could fix it. And the Financial Policy Committee mandated that you had to have a certain amount in reserve in pension funds. Point being, you could address it, it happened, and the yield on gilts went back down. What has been happening under Rachel Reeves is systemic. The tax rises she's put in place are systemically bad for our country. There is now no quick fix you can have, and we're in a doom loop. Who would invest here now?
I'll just comment on one thing he said. He's just given it away. The last time we were at this rate was 1998. That was the year after Labour came in. In other words, that's what we inherited last time from the Tories. So I think that, the Tory party has to take some... We were brought down borrowing quite a lot, and it went up again over the last... Tory government. Yeah,
I accepted the point that it was bad under Truss, so much more recently than '98. But the point was that with Truss, it was something specific you could put your finger on. Liability-driven investments and the exposure that we had on it, you could fix it, which promptly happened through the Bank of England, and the regulator could have acted, by the way, before the Truss budget. But the point with Reeves's activity is not just one thing that you can go and fix. So you'd look now as an investor and say, why would I invest here? They're going to tax me, they're going to tax my employees, they're going to tax my business more, and there's great economic uncertainty about their future. I choose somewhere else.
They should invest here because we're educating our people, we're putting in the infrastructure, we're doing the other things that employers also need.
I really hope you're right. As a patriot, as someone who lives here, I absolutely hope you're right. I really fear you're desperately wrong.
You mentioned as well that these are kind of global challenges. To some extent, that is true, but we are the worst performer, for example, in the G7 when it comes to these 30-year gilt yields. So we're not on track with our comparative economies. But the other thing I wanted to question you on was when you say, oh, we want all this spending and people don't want to pay the tax and all the rest of it, it's funded. I don't want to pay a single penny more tax, quite frankly, and many of my viewers, of course, will agree with me. But the problem that we've got in this country right now is that people are being taxed to record levels, but what is being done with that taxation is a source of absolute frustration to so many of my viewers, because they'll sit there and say, yes, we want more spending. We want more spending on whatever, I don't know, social care, NHS, whatever. You can take your pick. But there is a mismanagement people will feel because we are squandering money on the likes of, hotel bills, asylum costs, refugees, all of this kind of stuff. And people feel that there's an inherent unfairness in that. Why should they pay more tax when other people are benefiting?
Well, I think we have to be careful that we don't put false ideas around. First of all, your mention of G7. I think last month we had the biggest highest growth in the G7. So, you know...
I'm talking about the cost,
I know,
the long-term cost repayment. That's what I'm talking about.
But, you know, if you do comparisons, you can always pick your figures. I think, though, there's two things I would say. One is the investment is already paying off. The waiting lists are down, waiting times are down, but you cannot turn around in 1 year what, obviously, I think 14 years of not running the public sector. So if there is, you know, mismanagement, you know, we've got 14 years of another government running all those things. So I don't think, you know, we can turn that around in a year. The particular example you give, you may say we are spending money that we shouldn't on hotels for refugees, or asylum seekers, I should say, not refugees. And that may be the case. I have to say the whole of that would pay for about 4 hours of the NHS costs.
But it's
now, that's not to say we should do it, but I think if you're looking at the whole of expenditure and the whole of taxation, be very careful that we don't keep saying, but your taxes are being misspent, because that fuels the idea.
It's not me saying that they're being misspent, that fuels people's frustration or whatever. We was here the other day and we were talking about, there was this youth scheme that the Labour Party had announced. It was something like, correct me if I'm wrong if you remember the story, it was something about £88 million, or thereabouts, that this, I think it was a 3-year fund for the youth investment and all the rest of it. And when you actually broke down that 88 million, you compared that to how many days that actually was in terms of comparative spending or what you're putting on the hotels, it was something like not even a month's worth of spending or something. So you're giving that paltry amount of money to the British youth to try and better their life, and then you're putting this much money into the likes of 4- and 3-star hotels.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't, you know, that there isn't something we should do about those hotels. What I am saying is compared with all the other public expenditure. And what worries me is by blowing up, if you know, that's the wrong term, concentrating only on one bit of expenditure without seeing all the good expenditure we're doing. We put more police back on. We put more into health service. We're trying to get class sizes down and help special needs kids so they have a good start in life.
Oh, come on.
No, hang on.
Look, there's a lot we're doing, and my plea is, if you take one or two things that are perhaps not the money where the taxpayer wants to pay, they think all my taxes are being wasted.
I accept. Look, you're right. You can pick individual examples of expenditure, and it's artificial to say that's what's driving cost up. And whilst, of course, people can get very exercised, rightly so, about things like asylum hotels, it's neither here nor there when it comes to the size and scale of government spending and debt. This point I'm trying to make is where you're wrong is about the international situation, because when people talk about gilt yields, it's not just some theoretical thing that nobody outside of the city or financiers should be concerned about. Gilt yields are a sign that international investors are charging us more to borrow money. And we're already paying £125 billion a year to service our debt. So when gilt yields are going up, it is the market saying to us, no, you are going in the wrong direction. Inflation is going in the wrong direction. You are spending too much money. And if it gets worse and we go past 6% servicing on gilt yields, it's out of control. This is beyond the amber light on the warning signal. This is a red light from the international investing world that says the UK is going down the wrong direction financially.
Well, you know what? You can have the final say at home. You're a smart bunch. What do you make to it all? Get in touch. Join the conversation. Coming up after the break, I've got some breaking news for you as it happens about that Epping hotel, the Bell Hotel. So I'll bring you that breaking news. We'll also talk then about that Labour Party reshuffle. Is that the one then to fix some of these problems or not? See you in 2.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, almost time. I was just about to say hello there, almost time for Jubes & Co. What am I talking about? You've been with us now for the last 20 minutes. So sometimes I go on autopilot, so I do. Look, let me bring you some live breaking news. We've all followed the story about that Epping hotel now, the Bell Hotel. Well, we can now tell you that the Court of Appeal has refused the application of Epping Forest District Council for permission to appeal to the Supreme Court. So it's now basically over to the council to ask the Supreme Court itself for permission to appeal against the judgment of the Court of Appeal. Are you keeping up, ladies and gents? Anyway, the leader of Epping Forest District Council has said the following. The Court of Appeal judges appear to have placed the Secretary of State's duties towards asylum seekers above those of the council to uphold the planning system. What do you think to that decision at home, ladies and gents? Quick reaction from you, Alex Dean.
I'm surprised. I think the Court of Appeal can be criticised in many ways in recent years, whilst, of course, I respect our judiciary and still continue to think it's the best in the world. But its openness to issues of general public importance is not one of them. And I would have thought they would have permitted this to go forward, not questioning their own decision, but of the belief that there was an issue of sufficient merit and an issue of law that they would have permitted the Supreme Court to take a view. So I'm somewhat surprised. As you rightly say in your introduction, it's still possible for the Supreme Court of itself to initiate such a process, but it just renders it more unlikely.
Your thoughts?
I'm not very surprised because it is very much a point of law, and I think the appeal court is only interested on point of law, and Justice Bean and his two colleagues, I can't remember their names, were really very clear that the legal issue was what led to their decision, not whether it was being demanded by the public or anyone else. And that's right for an appeal court to do.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about this, we discussed it on the programme yesterday, was when Bridget Phillipson was asked the question, look, essentially, lawyers, it's been suggested that lawyers acting on behalf of the government are suggesting, or it could be interpreted as being suggested, that the wants, needs, desires of illegal migrants take precedent over the Epping residents, essentially. And she was asked, do you agree with what your lawyers have been saying? And she said yes.
But that wasn't the decision being taken by the appeal court. The appeal court was taking to the decision was whether the judge at the lower level had actually addressed himself correctly to the law. And their view was that the judge at the lower level had not correctly addressed the legal issue, and particularly the responsibility of the Home Secretary to make provision for asylum seekers. And so it was an issue of law they were deciding.
But that isn't, with respect, that's circular, because in reaching that conclusion, they determined that the duty that exists on the Home Secretary, undoubtedly, to find housing for asylum seekers overrode the interests of those that it affected. And it would seem to me that it is at least arguable as a point of law of general public importance whether that is right or not. Because that's the test. The Supreme Court, when judging whether or not to allow an appeal to come forward to itself, it will decide whether it's at least arguable as a point of law of general public importance. The question before them is such. And it seems to me that that is. Does the burden that rests on our Home Secretary to find housing for asylum seekers effectively trump the rights of people who live in the places that they decide to put that housing? And therefore I'm more surprised than you are.
But that wasn't the only view. I mean, if you're not careful, you will. This, I think, it was also discussed in the law case. If you're not careful, you will allow agitators to start saying, not just over this issue, but over any other one, planning permission for a new supermarket. If you get enough of a noise up, you can get the law changed. This would be the wrong way. We don't even know the view of all those Epping people. We know the view of the protesters who went there, but unless you're going to have a referendum, you really don't know the view of all the people there. So the idea that there's a certain group whose views must determine what happens, decide what the law says, is not the way in this country we make law. And we do not want to fuel the idea that protesters make law.
No, but councillors do, and councillors, their view is clear. They're elected locally, and the views of the councillors in Epping seem to be, who have a planning committee, seem to have been entirely ignored in favour of the procedural aspect of planning law. And it does seem to me that we run the risk, it's very interesting, at the same time, we run the risk of government preferring the system and the rules provided by a process when it suits them, and preferring the argument that democracy must be heard when it suits them. Because when the government lost at first instance, when the government lost in the first court, the government said that it's really important that democracy is heard here rather than just having a process of law. That is precisely what Yvette Cooper said. That's what our government was saying. It's much more important to think about democracy than it is to think about the strict letter of the planning law that might or might not have been quite right here that led to us losing this case before the district judge. Then when it comes to the Court of Appeal and they win, they ignore the democratic mandate of the people who live in Epping, who've made their position perfectly clear through their elected councillors. Now, it's not just a petition that you need to have if you want to have the view of local people. They've expressed their view locally by electing councillors who seem united in not wanting this centre.
They elected them some years ago before this was an issue. You really can't say that everyone who elected those councillors I think they're on the same term as London, 4 years ago, that this was the issue on which the people of Epping elected those councillors.
Of course it's imprecise, but we don't elect people for a single issue every time an issue comes up. We elect people for a term.
The councillors also said they will worry about the disturbances. And again, that was why they wanted that to close, to get rid of the disturbances.
And don't you think they're entitled? Don't you think they're entitled to take that view?
Can have that happen.
But don't you think that local representatives are entitled to say they're concerned about the risk of disturbance? Is putting it at a rather low bar, it seems to me, given some of the allegations around the Bell Hotel. But if it was just disturbance, aren't locally elected people entitled to stand up for their residents and say, I don't want this to happen? After all, we believe members of Parliament have a position to take, and we can ask the MP in and around Epping what they think too, and I think they've got a particularly clear perspective. But if your argument is that you were elected some time ago and therefore your view isn't valid, then what do you say about years 3, 4 and 5 of a Westminster Parliament?
A, I didn't say that, but B, I didn't say they shouldn't have a voice. I said they shouldn't have a veto. Of course they had a voice, and that was quite right that they took it to court to have that voice heard, but not a veto.
Well, there you go. You will have strong opinions on this topic. I know some of you guys at home, you get in touch with me regularly, share your views. Coming up after the break, Stand Up to Racism have published an open letter essentially suggesting that right-wingers need to stop linking immigration to sex attacks on women. Let's look at that. I also want to talk to you about prisons and tasers. Oh, I love these subjects. I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast. Parts of France will experience heavy, possibly thundery showers over the coming days, but elsewhere across northern parts of Europe, it should remain mostly fine and settled. That's certainly the case across much of Portugal and Spain, though northern parts of Spain may start to catch some of these showers pushing their way into France. As I say, some of these could turn into quite heavy downpours with a risk of hail and thunder. Elsewhere across Europe, though, mostly fine, settled, bar the odd shower across parts of Greece, and the settled weather remains over the weekend with temperatures in the mid-20s to low 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the rest of today, overnight into tomorrow, there will be a drier spell for a short period of time before some wet and windy weather pushes in due to a weather system that's currently just to the southwest of us, but it is going to make its way northeastwards. Before that, most of today's showers will actually die out, leaving some dry weather for a time. Not totally dry, some showery bursts continuing over some southern parts of Scotland, but across central northern parts of Scotland, staying largely dry with some clear skies through much of the night. Elsewhere across England, Wales and Northern Ireland, turning cloudy, wet and windy, and with that, temperatures not dropping a huge amount here, most places holding up in the mid-teens. Across some parts of Scotland, though, where we get those clear skies overnight, it could turn a bit fresh, be a bit of a fresh start to the day. Actually quite a bright picture first thing tomorrow morning. Elsewhere, a very different story. Lots of cloud, lots of rain for eastern and southern parts of Scotland. The rain could be quite heavy, quite persistent through the morning here. Plenty of outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland and across much of England and Wales. Some heavy persistent rain affecting some southern counties on your way to work perhaps tomorrow morning. There will also be some strong winds around which could cause some issues, particularly towards coastal parts in the south. Now, as we go through the day, the heavy and at times persistent rain across parts of Scotland and northern England will continue. Elsewhere, we're going to see the more persistent rain clearing, but there will be heavy, perhaps even thundery showers following in behind. Some sunshine in between those showers, but always worth factoring in those strong winds, especially in the south. Now, as we go through Thursday, it looks like another showery day for many, perhaps a spell of more persistent showery rain feeding across parts of central into eastern England. Elsewhere, a scattering of showers. These will be hit and miss, so some drier, sunnier weather in between. Friday, however, actually looks like a largely dry day for many. Not totally dry, and that's the theme that we take in to at least the start of the weekend.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M8 eastbound, restrictions exist between junctions 22 and 21 due to a vehicle breakdown. The M25 anti-clockwise between junction 27 and M11 junction 6 southbound access has an accident. In Leeds, minor congestion occurs on the M621 eastbound at junction 7. Birmingham's M6 northbound sees 30-minute delays between junctions 5 and 6. In Essex, the M25 anti-clockwise near junction 27 has one lane closed due to a collision. And on the trains, there are disruptions on Chiltern Railways between Dorridge and Birmingham Moor Street. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jubes & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, till 7. Alex Dean, the political consultant, alongside me, as is Baroness Diane Hayter. I've got to say, many people have got in touch to agree with you on the first topic. Lots of people disagreeing with you as well, don't worry. But also pointing out, Alex, unfortunately, a lot of people do still blame the Tories in terms of the financial situations of this country. Keep your thoughts coming in. There's a lot of anger about Epping Hotel. That won't surprise you, but Diane's basically saying the law is the law, and if you bow to protesters, where would that end up? What do you think to that? Look, I want to talk to you about an open letter that has been released. It won't surprise you to know that celebrities have got on board. This was a letter that was coordinated by Stand Up to Racism. Sign the open letter, they call Women Against the Far Right. And long story short, the nuts and bolts of this is saying that they believe that people like Nigel Farage, Robert Jenrick, whatever, they are using sex attacks as a way of kind of undermining immigrants and immigration and asylum seekers and whatever. They very strongly disagree with it. Alex Dean, your thoughts?
Last month, the Ministry of Justice produced their statistics on sexual offences, which showed that the number of offences committed by, this is convictions, by foreign nationals, foreign migrants, was up 62% in the last 4 years. So 1 in every 7 sexual offence convictions now in this country is by a foreign migrant. Facts aren't racist, they're just facts. And in the face of that, for whatever bizarre reason, some people who you would think would have more reason to stand up for women in this country and be concerned for their safety than for saying things like this, want to, on the one hand, hurl abuse at those of us who think that we should do something about that, and on the other hand, pretend it's not an issue or a problem. Well, to repeat my point, in the end, a fact isn't racist, it's just the truth.
Well, this letter, this group of people suggest basically that using women's safety it's been now leveraged as a weapon to spread racism and division. They go on to say, and I quote, "There's no evidence that people seeking refuge are more likely to commit acts of sexual violence," and it goes on and on.
Sorry, I should just clarify and say that is true. It's true that there is no evidence that people seeking asylum necessarily are more likely to commit a sexual offence. It depends very much where they're from, and so it's in the Casey review that the grooming gangs we had in this country were overwhelmingly from one ethnic background. And if you're bringing more people, you've got a problem in a culture or a society where women are regarded as second class at best. Then you're trying to import those people to this country. You are importing that problem.
Well, first of all, I mean, violence against women is not new. I mean, it was interesting. We heard, I think it was today or yesterday, that the Queen herself had had a sexual attack when she was much younger. So, this is not new, and there's always been this sort of, well, there can be a reaction saying, oh, it's all this sort of people, or that sort of people. Incidentally, one thing I disagree with the letter is calling the people who say this far right. I think it's very unhelpful for anyone to start categorising people who raise an issue. But I do agree with the letter that this is not the right way to deal with the issue of violence against particularly women and girls. We've had it a lot. We had it here amongst our white police force. I live in London, and one of the awful cases we had was with a policeman who sexually attacked and then killed a woman here in London. I've worked with women's groups for a long time.
You're talking about Sarah Everard?
So, yes. And so, this has gone on for a long time. The issue is partly a sex one. It's men who commit crimes. And, of course, most of a large proportion of the people arriving are men. And they are particularly of the age group, which, again, amongst the community, the whole of our community, that age group is more propensity to crime. So we've got, at the moment, a larger number of exactly the cohort. If you compare our foreign migrants with the same age and gender as the UK residents, you probably find it's not out of kilter.
That's not true.
But I think the important thing is it's not just migrants. You mentioning Casey or the J report on the grooming gangs, that wasn't about migrants. They were mostly long-standing British citizens. So I think it's wrong that we start blaming what I'm afraid, have too much of in this country, which is abuse of particularly vulnerable women. It's not just about migrants. We must deal with our own problems too.
Well, you're of course right. Violence, no matter who has committed it, is wrong. And if it's by native British people, it's just as wrong as if committed by a foreign migrant, of course. And we also agree that it's unhelpful to go around people saying, someone who disagrees with me is far right. If in the end everyone's far right, which is the same as saying nobody is. And in the end, if you've cried wolf long enough and you've called every Tory you ever meet or every Reform voter you ever meet some kind of bigot or some kind of far right, then when the real far right emerges, you'll have exhausted all language of warning that might mean that the society would listen to you in the first place. But I'm afraid on the statistics that we see from the Ministry of Justice, we draw their data from the Police National Computer and from our courts, it seems that it is not the case to say that offending rates are the same like for like native British to the populations that we are bringing to this country. And I'll go further. most British people will look at a situation and say it is not the UK's responsibility to heal the world and go to every country that's got a problem with itself and where women are being mistreated and extract men of fighting age from that place and bring them here. It is to say that most British people, hearing that a place is terrible and the way that women are treated in that place is terrible, think it's a bad idea to bring people from that place to our country. And the sooner our political class starts to understand that, the better off as a society we will be.
One of the things that I find interesting is, yes, domestic violence is, violence against women and girls. Domestic violence is a cancer on society, and there was a recent stat, it was 2 women a week are killed by current or former partners. It's disgusting, despicable cancer, which is all the more reason, then, not to be importing men that don't value women. There is a higher conviction rate. So I think it's Afghan men, a 22 times higher conviction rate for some of these crimes than British people. You end up in a situation as well where if you can't acknowledge that you are putting women at a greater risk by choice, because when you start choosing to import men that don't regard and respect women, that is a problem.
So there's something fundamental I want to agree with you about, but I think some of that language doesn't really help. We're not importing men. This is not us bringing them over. They are trying to come here, but it sounds almost as if we're wanting them here. That isn't the case. And I think there is a big issue, which is, in a sense, more fundamental than the particular one we're discussing now. The idea about asylum was not that we take people from a country that is suffering a lot. I would hate to live in Afghanistan as a woman, but that does not give me the right for asylum here. If I'd been a judge in Afghanistan before the Taliban was round and there was a bounty, if you like, on my head, then I hope we would give those women, because they hated the women, we would give them asylum. But just because a country is going through war, that's not grounds for asylum. And therefore, we're not in any way importing. And actually, these are exactly the people that, in my mind, do not have the right for asylum. So I just don't want the idea going that we're sort of there welcoming and importing these people. The people that very often that do need asylum are either, who are not going to be attack on women, are gay men because they are under threat of being killed in their own country, or they've been particularly vociferous in trying to defend the rights of women in that country. So be careful not to put all Afghan men in the same...
I'm not putting all Afghan men in the same bracket. Dr. Umar Al-Qaid, I apologise if I've pronounced his name wrong, Quadri, I think his surname is. He's the chairperson, Irish Muslim Peace and Integration Council, chief imam, entrepreneur, Ireland's first migrant MEP candidate. He put out a tweet, and this was in response to something. He was clarifying something that he'd said earlier on. So he was listing, it was all about violence against women and girls. So he was basically saying he agrees with you that the problem is men. That's what he was essentially saying. But a part of his tweet really caught my eye, because he was saying that whilst he agrees that men, regardless of culture and background, are overwhelming the perpetrators of violence, he says at the same time we must also acknowledge that some cultures are very different. In certain societies, even something as innocent as a smile may be misinterpreted as consent. And he then goes on to say that why you need cultural awareness and integration is essential. And he goes on to say he doesn't believe that every person from a different culture is a threat, and far from it. But if you've got a scenario where men, quote, interpret a smile as consent, does that not concern you about allowing men from those communities into this country among women and girls?
Well, I don't think that's how they're coming in, and I don't think that's one of the criteria on which we would take them in. But some of those issues that are raised are not just about migrant men. They're about men born in this country. So, we're again...
Why is there a reluctance to accept the higher risk factor?
Because I don't think those coming over and who get asylum. So I'm not, because many of these should not get asylum because they don't have, you know, well-founded fear of persecution, which is the definition. That goes into we should make sure we send back as quickly as possible those who don't qualify. But it's not this small cohort that are the problem. It is men's attitudes, including amongst British-born men.
Well, there you go. What do you make to what you are hearing? Let's cross over, though, to America. Look who's standing outside the White House. Beverly Turner, hello.
Sunny.
Hello, London. This is DC calling. Bev here outside the White House. Donald Trump came back after his long bank holiday weekend. Said he's going to make an announcement tonight, 7 p.m. UK time. Let's discuss, Michelle, after the break, what that might be. And I'll tell you the other main headlines here from Washington this evening.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's News Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you until 7 o'clock. Alex Dean alongside me, also Baroness Diane Hayter. Let's take you, without further ado, though, over to the White House. Beverly Turner, it's all going on, the Queen of America. Hello, Beverly. We've got this huge announcement coming up, apparently, from Donald Trump imminently.
That's right. Donald Trump took a long bank holiday weekend. When I got off the aeroplane here, there were rumours of his demise. People were literally speculating online that Donald Trump had died. I'm delighted to say that he hadn't. He'd just been playing golf on a lovely summer weekend. What's considered to be the last weekend of summer here in America, because everybody is back in the offices today. They're back in the White House just behind me. And Donald Trump has teased a huge announcement. Of course, it would be a huge announcement. It's Donald Trump. Everything is bigger, greater and better than everybody else. The announcement, we believe, and it hasn't been confirmed, is about the Space Command, about the race to the moon and what American plans are with that. That not necessarily relevant to a British audience, I accept, but one of the big issues as well that Donald Trump has had a setback on today is something that I know that our viewers watch quite carefully. It's about immigration and about crime and law and order. And Donald Trump has lost a legal case today in California. And this is because he used the National Guard. We see them here in Washington, soldiers accompanying the police and working alongside them, particularly in relation to what are called these ICE raids, which is the immigration department going knocking on doors, dragging people out quite literally in some cases because they don't have a right to stay in the country. Well, a judge has concluded in California that this contravenes a 19th century law, meaning that the army can't support the police force in that way. It's a federal law, and that will be a huge story here because, of course, Donald Trump is talking about rolling out the National Guard to states all across the country in order to minimize crime. I've had very interesting conversations here in Washington about that. You might think, Michelle, you and I would probably love to see soldiers on the streets in the UK. I think at a time when crime is high, it might make us feel safer. Well, fascinatingly, a lot of people here in DC are not fans of that. Might be slightly because they just don't like anything that Donald Trump does, but also they say that it gives the impression that the city is more dangerous than it actually is, and it deters people from visiting, from coming to restaurants and that kind of thing. These, Michelle, are all the big sorts of issues which we're going to be digging down to in the Late Show Live. It's going to start very soon, and we will tell you the details as soon as we can, but do stay tuned to GB News for this big announcement from Donald Trump at 7 p.m. And I miss you guys already.
Oh, we miss you. And by the way, I find some of these announcements from Donald Trump a bit boring, really, especially if it's about something like a space command. But my favourite bit is always the Q&A afterwards, because goodness only knows where that thing can go off. Anyway, look, another issue that they do seem to pay keen attention to is free speech in the UK. In a second, I'm going to try and squeeze in a little debate about something that's happened here, the arrest of Graham Linehan. Your thoughts when it comes to the free speech mantras of the UK?
Oh, Michelle, sorry, you're still talking to me. Great. What do I think about that? Listen, Elon Musk has just tweeted to say that he believes that we're living in a police state. The Graham story, obviously, it's a semi-active case now. We have to be a little careful about what we say about that.